Guess we are live. Alright, we are live. Can everyone hear me? Alright, and let's see here. Guys, we are live. Can you guys hear me and 911 Revisionist? You want to say hi, 911?
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so 911, should I call you by your first name or just keep it 911 Revisionist?
Keep it on 911 Revisionist. You can drop my name. We will drop it later during the course of the presentation.
All right,
so
perfect. Okay, so Paul Levels says, yeah, he can hear me. Epic stuff. Okay, so Nico Star says, YouTube says I'm subscribed, but it won't let me get notified, and I can't find you in subscriptions. I can only get you on BitChute. Yeah, interesting. I got your email as well, Nico. It's pretty ridiculous. YouTube is quite ridiculous. Like even if you're subscribing, some people were unsubscribed, some just weren't getting notified, and yeah, I get several messages like that. That's why you should bookmark the at MES. So just YouTube, you could just periodically check it at youtube.com/@MES. It's easy to remember, and just keep it.
Yeah, people have also mentioned that on my X profile that they're getting unsubscribed.
Well, yeah, that's crazy. All right, and yeah, so everything so we have 8 viewers right now. Everything's fine, and I'm gonna see how this looks. Okay, so it's sharing your screen. Yeah, so it's not sharing the actual screen. Heidi, let's all go indeed. Okay, so this is good actually, because we're using Skype and I can't see what I'm being shared. So this is okay. So now it's better. Now you guys can see the comments. So we have 9 people, and yeah, so there's the comments I read, and then Joe Lafiamia says I can hear you all both, and then Christopher Jong says Heidi, let's go indeed. All right, so we have 9 people. We'll see when we should start going. And
well, it is a long presentation. I think we should just get stuck in it.
We'll just get going. Okay, so we have 9 people. Okay, 10 people now. Just okay, 911 planes research. Oh, Mark Collins in the house. Oh, this is unreal. It's hot. Okay, Mark is in the house. Okay, Paul Level says, hello, 911 Revisionist, despite our differences on some topics, I support you and I'm looking forward to your presentation. Yeah, epic stuff. You guys always go at it in the comments. It's all good. All right, and yeah, so I think we just start going. Whoever's late, you can chime in. Just in time, baby. Okay, so Migo 1990 just got in just before the presentation starts. Epic stuff. All right, guys. So let's just see. I'll send the link here. So yeah, we'll just get started. I'm gonna send a link to the notes, and also include the notes that he'll be covering over. Will be in it as well. I'm gonna put this in the chat. So there's the there is the links to all the links and the notes, and it includes all of 911 Revisionist Substack, X, Telegram, Odyssey, etc., and email address if you wanna get in contact and follow all his social media. All right, and this is a pretty epic profile I made. I took all the screenshots. Well, I just took photos from all the ones that in his presentation, and put them all together. And yeah, so 911 Revisionist, needs no introduction. He is pretty much the world's biggest 911 activist. Like currently, just going at it every day. It's epic stuff. And I'm gonna go see some more notes here, and then see what we have. So yeah. Also, yeah. So the notes, the presentation he'll be covering will be right in here. So view and download 911 Revisionist presentation notes. If you click it, I put it in my OneDrive. And he'll be covering all these, and you can see everything here. So all the stuff is over here, and I'm gonna put this here. Oh, Metal Miners in. What's up, guys? All right, yeah. So 911 Planes Research says hi, Matthew. Epic stuff. Can anyone see my comment? I'm ghosted. I can see your comment. Okay, I'm gonna click live chat. Okay, so make it live now. All right, guys. We have 14 people. And yeah, let's just get this show on the road. We see your chat. I see your comment. All right, conspiracy theorists is in the house too. All right, we have a lot of OGs in the house. All right, so yeah, 911 Revisionist. You wanna get this show on the road?
Yeah. Okay. So basically, I just want to bring in a little bit of background. Like all of us, we've gone through all the conspiracy routes with regards to 9/11. I initially found all the work of the mainstream protagonists with regards to thermite and John Cole with all his experiments, and then the nuke stuff and all of that kind of stuff. And then somewhere, and that started in 2011, 2012, I then stumbled upon Dr. Wood's 2012 presentation, the energy presentation. And that basically, I sat through that and then it just ticked all the boxes. And ever since then, I've been championing her work. And by the 21st anniversary, I just saw that you don't hear anything about Dr. Wood anymore, and the other guys are still pushing very, very hard. And I then just decided, look, I've got to try and just wake people up or remind people about Dr. Wood. And that's how I started my Odyssey channel, how I started my Telegram channel, and then later on ended up with starting with my Substack. And yeah, so around about 3 weeks ago, old Jean Laratonda, who is the moderator for many of the Zoom calls held by the 9/11 Truther movement, I went on to a couple of their Zooms in 2023 and asked them questions pertaining to the evidence that Dr. Wood presents, and I got pushback every time, and they didn't really want to ask my questions until I basically just called them out on being disingenuous. And yeah, so I've got we'll get to the whole 2023 interactions with everybody. And 3 weeks ago, old Gene came onto my Odyssey channel and started bad-mouthing directed energy and all of that kind of stuff. So
just 1 second. Sorry to interrupt. 9/11 Revisionist. I was getting a comment here. Paul Level says, "Can you increase the volume there? Can you increase your volume somehow? It's a bit hard to."
I can't increase my volume, unfortunately.
Okay, let's see how I can.
You'll have to do it on your side, most probably.
That's a good question. How do I increase my volume? I'll check the settings. Desktop audio. Okay, it's a decibel volume increase percentage. Okay, I'm gonna increase the desktop audio. Let's go 150%. Okay, can you speak now? And let me just.
Okay, and am I a little bit louder now for people?
Is it louder or no? Or where did it go? Okay. Bless up. What's the only one that checks all the boxes? Okay. Yeah, let's just get this correctly first. Okay, so is the desktop audio here? Just start speaking. Let me know if it's better. I can hear you both. Okay, this is better. Okay, I'll see if I can make it even louder. I'll make it 200%.
Test. Can everybody hear me now, loud and clear?
Okay, so it's 200% now. Leave the volume settings as is. Okay, so it's 200%. Is it too loud or is it good?
Because we're going to go into videos as well, so that might also affect people.
Volume is good, just a little bit muffled. All right, so your volume's a little bit muffled, he says. So.
Oh well, I haven't got a professional setup here. It's just normal cell phone type stuff. Okay. So let's get into the stuff that we had. Now, Jean Laratonda came onto my Telegram channel and left a couple of messages. Let me see. Can you see this comment?
Okay, so you're sharing your screen now? Okay, I wasn't sharing it. Let me know you're sharing. Okay, so I will. Okay, now you are recording. Okay, so we are showing your stuff now. Okay. We weren't sharing before, so this is the comment right here.
Okay, so he basically came in, thought that I was Abraham Rodriguez, and just dropped like 10 points, and this is what we're basically going to be covering tonight or today. For some of you, it's 11 o'clock in South Africa where I am at, and I also wrote an article about it on my Substack, because he basically came onto my Odyssey channel, and this interaction in 2011 has got a nice breakdown excuse me, of all the points that Gage wasn't discussing. And then I referenced the 10 points. I gave him a couple of quick pointers that he can go and look at. And then the following, he then told me in the comments section over there that I should come onto his war room and discuss the points that he raised. You also called me a coward for being an anonymous person. I don't really like being on camera. I've got a face for radio, so it's one of those things. So then after I entered the room, they then decided, okay, fine, they're not going to be talking about due, and they had Richard Gage's lawyer on there, which Matthew has given a nice flogging in one of the previous Zoom calls. And I basically just kind of went on and said, okay, but Gene, you're stating you don't want to honor your statements. I look forward to your discussion in the 9/11 War Room this Sunday. You will be required to be on camera to lead a discussion. And after I posted the link where we interacted with Mick, the lawyer, Gene then basically kicked us off. There's a reference to the September 5 video call, and then I also gave him the chapters in Dr. Wood's book where each and every one of these points are actually discussed. And this is one of the other previous War Room Zooms that they held. I think Matthew was also attending, and there was a couple of other Dr. Wood, can't call them followers, but people who've seen the light. Yep. And as soon as we came on and asked a couple of uncomfortable questions, this is the result that we got.
So,
So
forgive me, everybody.
I can hear the audio. Can you guys hear the audio?
Okay.
I think they should be. I think they can. Y'all hear the video audio. All right, it's played. I think they can. If they can't, oh.
I'm going to end something right now real quick. Norman, this is the War Room. This is my playground. You are not going to come in here and talk to people like you do other places. You keep doing what you're doing that I see in this chat, and I'm going to kick you out of here, and you're never going to come back again. I welcome you to be part of this conversation if you're going to show respect to other people in here. Right now, my blood is boiling at seeing you. You better knock it off, man. I'm telling you right now. That's the end of it. All right. Anyways. Thank you, Josh. We'll look for that in the chat.
And Barbara was going to say something.
Go ahead, Barbara. Sorry.
I just left on the last War Room. I couldn't find the chat, but I found it. Never mind.
Okay.
And then a couple of other
But
people
at the end,
chimed
if you
in
could
the
remind
comment
us how to
section.
copy the chat, because I don't remember.
All right. You guys aren't coming in here and doing this. I'm telling you right now in the chat, you're not doing this.
Can you block him from the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to... You guys continue to do this in the chat. You're going to be out of here real quick. No, you know what? I'm done with it. I'm not even doing it. Goodbye. Remove.
Bye-bye.
And the other guy, Nick. See you, buddy.
Oh, I got Nick out too.
Yep.
He kept me there. One of the guys was wondering who liked the post, but he kept me by accident.
All right, that just totally got me all riled up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so then that's just a quick question. You can go read this article. It goes into a couple of different things. So, and then we had old Matthew Nouse on there as well, who used to mingle with all of them in the past. So the main thing, okay, I need to chime in with a disclaimer here as well, because that's what people tend to hold against you. I just want to say I'm not affiliated with any research or organization, governmental body or whatever. I'm not getting paid for the research I'm doing. What I'm going to be sharing tonight is what, in my mind, is the most accurate explanation of what happened to 7 buildings with a WTC prefix on 9/11, after looking at all the talking points that have been raised in the last 22 years. So if you want to know why I'm doing this as well, you can go to my first Substack article and listen to and go read it.
I have found the truther movement is full of charlatans and organizations, regurgitating old theories, interviewing people on a weekly basis who looked into 9/11 multiple years ago, who just dust off their old information, presenting it as if it is new information and trying to extort more and more money from their over-trusting supporters.
That's my first article that I wrote a while ago. And some of my main sources that people can go look at, it is the Observable Evidence series that was sent anonymously to Andrew Johnson, I think in 2020. And it's really, really, really good. Any person who's basically open-minded and can put their bias aside when they work through this will see the light. The first 9/11 Observable Evidence video is around about an hour long. There are a couple of installments. Then anybody who wants to know what the background is with regards to all the politics, if you want to call it that, going back all the way to 2005, when the Scholars for 9/11 Truth was started by Jim Fetzer and Stephen E. Jones and all those guys. They basically roped in Dr. Wood, Andrew Johnson, and a whole bunch of people. He's written extensively. This is a must-read book if you want to get to know what all the huff and puff has been around Dr. Wood's work. He's also written the second book, 9/11 Finding the Truth. Another very, very important documentary to watch is 9/11 Alchemy, Facing Reality, by Chris Hampton. He's actually done 3 excellent 9/11 Alchemy documentaries. This one, he had Mark Conlon in there as well with his absolutely superb research work that he's done on the planes and still is doing. And I highly recommend also going on to his platform, his BitChute videos. He's going to be a bit stifled on YouTube. He's also going to be starting his own Substack. So as soon as he gets live on that, I would say get on to it and follow that. And then obviously the book that nobody wants you to read. And you need to read this as soon as possible if you haven't read it yet. And if you read it 2 or 3 times to get the gist of it. So the next thing, and this is the most important aspect with regards to 9/11 that I think, any conclusion can be reached about anything, but the value of that conclusion will be inversely proportional to the amount of evidence ignored. And that is what we find with a lot of the proponents for the other narratives, is they will only give you some of the information and distort it to fit their narrative. And that is something that I've seen time and time again, and we will be delving into that as soon as we start with the 10 points. Now, perception management has been a major issue with regards to 9/11. It was a psychological operation. There's many levels. Tonight's little 2-hour powwow that we're going to have isn't nearly enough time to go through everything and all the bluff around that. So we're just going to be focusing on what happened to the towers and then the 10 points that they want to use as refutation against directed energy weapons. So I've got 2-3 videos that I just quickly want you guys to listen to, because that'll give you a good idea of around perception management. So let's go.
So essentially the only way to muddy the waters is just to insert doubt at every possible opportunity. And there are some very sort of common techniques, which I think I put them all under the umbrella of perception management, whereby instead of using the word evidence, you never use the word evidence, you use the word theory. And this then, immediately mischaracterizes it so that a theory, of course, can be debated, to a much greater extent than evidence.
There's a whole lot of evidence and very weird things that happen at the World Trade Center. We don't want every theory out there on our website. There's a whole lot of evidence, theory, evidence. I'm not going to present every piece of evidence out there that I can't explain. We have produced the evidence. I'm not going to present every piece of evidence out there that I can't explain. We have produced the evidence. I'm not going to present every piece of evidence out there that I can't explain.
Now, tell us specifically about the petition that's available for signing by architects and engineers and other supporters at ae911truth.org.
The petition demands of Congress a real investigation They want a new investigation? Well, read my book. There you go.
Yes.
If they're calling for a new investigation, what they're doing is admitting that they are not capable of conducting an investigation.
How true.
If anyone really wants an investigation, please read this book. It is the most important book I've ever read in my entire life. And just take it for yourself and please just read it.
Thanks, Abraham.
And Where Do the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood, please. Like, we're all on the same team.
Appreciate that very much.
I don't know.
So, did you hear any explosions, David?
Fessinger showed that people will actively avoid situations or information that might challenge those beliefs and values in order to avoid dissonance.
9/11 was an attack on human consciousness.
It's simple. Go to rethink911.org right now and donate to your city. Share this ambitious campaign with everyone you know, and together, let's change the course of history.
They're always keeping them occupied, so any door is good as long as it isn't the evidence. We have over 19,000 other individuals joining us, demanding a real investigation based on the specific evidence, the scientific evidence for explosive controlled demolition. At all three World Trade Center skyscrapers on 9/11.
Well, when you look at 7, that's a conventional controlled demolition.
No, it isn't. No, it was not either. Because you got to read the book, Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood, BS, MS, and PST.
No, I know who she is. I know who she is.
I just finished her book. It's very remarkable.
Okay, so another aspect of the perception management, and this is something that Andrew Johnson has also laid out very beautifully. Let's give this a quick listening to.
Professor.
I remember from 3-4 years back that his picture was different. You can see he's changed all the contrast. He said in his presentation, this was thermite. So what's he doing? Saying, yeah, this is thermite. I'm a physicist. I know what I'm talking about. Don't look at the building turning to dust, which is what's actually happening.
"9/11 was an attack on human consciousness.
You know, Department of Energy funded our research.
You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of a telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big. The building collapsed to dust.
We have seemed to have abandoned logic and reason. Do you see that as a trend? And if so, then what in the world can we do to change it? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question, and that's spot on correct. It's the biggest problem we encounter. I mean, we are a Skeptic Society as a science organization, and the whole problem of critical thinking is huge in this country. People are swept up by emotions, particularly when it comes to religion and politics. People are emotionally invested in their positions and beliefs. People on the left and the right, Christians, Jews, Muslims, everybody are committed to their positions. That makes it very difficult to think critically and clearly about evidence.
Throughout the month of September, you'll see Rethink 9/11 on subways, billboards, and sides of buses.
We've seen a similar operation going on for the last, at least, well, for the last 5.5 years, really, almost now, and particularly since 2008, this seems to have accelerated with these groups like Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, which are essentially, we've now got some evidence that those groups were purely set up to stop people discovering what Dr. Judy Wood has put together and stop them from realizing that it was actually correct, to try and delay that realization for as long as possible.
On bumper stickers, t-shirts, lawn signs, and freeway overpasses, on library bulletin boards, on storefronts, and all over Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
So this is just an explanation with regards to Building 7.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't suppress this evidence, call it a theory.
Professor.
I remember from...
So in June 2023, we had a lady, Elsa Schroeder, who held a Truth Summit, and she basically got Richard Gage on, for her pre-recordings, and then she emailed her followers or her email group of people and said that she had Richard Gage on. I think 2 or 3 people emailed her with regards to Dr. Wood, and she then also reached out to Andrew Johnson and Dr. Wood, and eventually had Andrew Johnson on. And after talking to Andrew, she then wrote 2 articles, and I'm going to play a short video clip now of a panel discussion that they also had. And that was the first time that I've ever seen Richard Gage and Andrew Johnson in one Zoom call. So the links to Elsa's Substack is in the show notes, and it is in reference in 1 or 2 of my Substack articles as well. And she basically goes into what she learned, because she's never really looked into 9/11, didn't really know about Building 7, and was a real eye-opener for her after she had Andrew Johnson on. Then after the panel discussion, she then also reached out to Dr. Wood and then wrote this second article, The Refutation of Gage's Game. Dr. Wood responds to Richard Gage, no more nails needed in this coffin, because he basically shared his 15-year-old article that's still on Architects for Engineered Truth's website. And then there's also a link that you can go download with regards to what Dr. Wood basically said. So let's listen to that interaction with Richard Gage and Andrew Johnson.
Okay, but you think Earth is round or flat?
Well, I don't know. I've seen it other than what's been shown to us on the television. So what do I know?
So that answer is still not a certain answer. We know
Right. Well, that's what we learned in school, and that's what I accept.
So you accept that for Earth round?
Why not? I don't know.
You don't know that the Earth is round?
That's what I've learned.
Yes, I'd just like to say regarding what Mr. Gage has been saying, the answers to all of his points really are in the book Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood. And I know that Mr. Gage has a copy of that book, and if anybody wants to find out about that, that's on my website, checktheevidence.com, and they can write to me there. And I really think this is a very important issue. Some people say the details of 9/11 don't matter. Well, they do. And the way that those details are being covered up with layers and well-funded groups, it's very important people understand that, because there are those layers operating elsewhere. So it may be you think you found the truth, but actually there is another layer in the way, and we have smooth operators trying to convince you of certain things using a certain vocabulary and certain things like neuro-linguistic programming and various techniques like that, which we see in advertising, to try and advertise these things to you. So I'd just like to make people aware of that, and that's been my experience quite markedly, and I've seen it in operation. I've seen it with people I know. I've seen them sort of stab me in the back intellectually, not physically, thankfully. So this is all documented in my books, and the people that want to read those are all free. So, you know, I'm not making any money off this. I don't get paid to do this. I work for the Open University still. They did want to get rid of me, but that was after they published one of my articles back in 2007, thankfully. So, you know, all those tactics I'm sure are familiar to many of the panelists here. There are well-funded groups trying to cover up obvious evidence and masquerade, put other things forward which masquerade as evidence, but actually they're not.
Andrew and Judy have evidence that you are not paying attention to, because I have been reading the book.
Oh, I read the book too. Yeah.
You read the book too. Okay,
yeah,
so
I found it to be almost pure fantasy.
Okay, there was absolutely no. Okay, so I'm not gonna get into the discussion then. What my fantasy was, you're publicizing your ability to push it out, combined with the directed energy stuff, because the directed energy weapons, these definitely exist.
If I may interject here, Elsa. Of course. The evidence for the forest fires is very peculiar, but it's not as well documented as what happened on 9/11. In Dr. Judy Wood's book, you'll see the results of surveys of 40,000 pictures, survey of 500 witness accounts of the day. Also, you'll see that these directed energy weapons are not like anything that you see advertised by the military, such as the airborne laser or anything like that. These are a completely different class of technology, which is completely in the black world, and that's how I came to understand it, because I investigated the UFO cover-up, which is also involves the black world, which is not spoken about. People don't know about it. A lot of that stuff goes back to Los Alamos National Laboratories, for example. And then you have figures like Colonel John Alexander, who worked for them and went to see John Hutchison in 1983. So this technology, this black technology, has a history which is decades old and probably goes back to the 1940s. This is not a fantasy. This is not what is in Dr. Wood's book is not a fantasy, and she's not a witch, which is what Mr. Gage has called her in the past.
I didn't call her a witch.
I've got a recording of you saying that, sir. So
No,
I'm afraid you did.
That's
what you implied. That's what you implied. You didn't call her a witch, but you said that if she's writing a book like that, she's practicing witchcraft. The recording of you saying that, you did. It's on my website.
Okay.
Wait a minute. I says there are dozens of nuts out there that do have
that's not
PhDs.
appropriate to our conversation. Our conversation is,
you're making
have
an
you
argument-
examined and
you're
taken
making
on
an
her book, which
you're
she
making
has
an argument
documented to
based
a
on-
great degree. Have you read her book, and are you willing to debunk it? But all of these different phenomena, have you done that, or are you going to do that?
Now, with Judy Wood is not going to acknowledge any of that evidence and just hand wave it away, then she's not practicing science. She's practicing witchcraft. Go ahead.
Well, you know what? The problem that I'm running into here, I have an architect that has no training in this at all, making all kinds of allegations without the evidence. Now, let's not be quiet here.
I think it's very important that people understand the truth here and what those truths are and why they're important.
I
You covered some of
recommend
that, Elsa.
everyone read the book.
500 pages of meticulous evidence.
Okay, so now we get to the fun part, and this is Gene's points. He basically came out and said, here are the main points against the use of directed energy weapons. I'm going to start with his first point, the debris pile height. He basically states the claim of a too low debris pile is debunked by recognizing that 90% of the Twin Towers mass fell outside their footprints. Now, if he's bothered to read Dr. Wood's book, chapter 9, pages 171 to 196, he would find a very nice discussion with regards to the rubble pile height. He's of the idea that everything got ejected laterally like 600 feet. So let's investigate that assumption. So let's just remember what the World Trade Center complex looked like. We had 210-story buildings. We had building 3, that was a 22-story building. Building 4, 9 stories. Building 5, 9 stories. Building 7, 47 stories. Now, if you look in this picture, you'll see the sphere in the Liberty Plaza. And we've got to just focus, we need to focus on that so that we can get an idea of the size of the buildings, and the next couple of pictures will just put that into perspective. Now, that is basically just after the first airplane-shaped hole appeared. You can basically see the size of the sphere in relation to everything around in Liberty Plaza. Here's another picture out of one of the towers showing you an elevated view of that sphere. Now, what happened after the buildings basically disintegrated? This is what we looked at. And right over there, you can see the sphere. Now, if they say that everything got ejected laterally 600 feet, now, where's the rubble? You can see nothing is left of building 3. This is the South Tower. A whole section of building 4 isn't there anymore. You've got building 6 over there with a massive gaping hole inside of it. You've got building 7, that's basically a 47-story building that was reduced to a pile of rubble that wasn't even 3 stories high. Now, if you do the calculation on an average controlled demolition of 12.5% rubble pile that's supposed to be left over, you had to have at least 5 or 6 stories there. And in relation to building 6, that's 8 stories high, you can see even the rubble pile for building 7 isn't in line with what you would expect for a controlled demolition. So let's move over to a different view. You can see the spire of the sphere. That's the outside remnants of the North Tower, building 6 over there. And that is stairwell B, where we had 16 survivors, and we'll discuss them a little bit later as well. Just another nice picture of the sphere. You can still see that there is a rather large amount of rubble, but if you do your calculations on 12.5%, even if it's ejected laterally, you would need at least 13 stories of rubble, and it's not there. This is the candlesticks that they called, and that was basically the lobby, around about 3 stories high, so the rubble didn't even fill the lobby. And this is solid steel. And
just to
once
chime
again,
in, sorry now, so this one is, it's not just steel, they have steel, and then the surrounding is aluminum. So you have aluminum these trident shapes like that. Those are all aluminum around the steel columns.
Yeah, the candlesticks. Yeah, that's, you can see there. That's the aluminum cladding that was over the steel. Around it. Yeah. This is just a quick meme, just also showing that same picture. And this is what we saw. This is a different view. The ambulance isn't clobbered by anything. You can basically just see a hell of a lot of aluminium cladding. You can see how small the people are. That's the intact core. Once again, stairwell B, where we had 16 people survive. They weren't clobbered by falling debris. They didn't get burned by molten metal raining down from above. And they didn't die from radiation poisoning from some other nuke that went off. Just another view a little bit further. What you had that was supposed to be over here where the fireman is walking, you should have seen building 3, 22 stories, but it's not there anymore. It's gone. And you've got where this fireman is walking, that's round about where that ambulance was. Aerial view of ground zero. You can see these buildings that were a lot shorter or not nearly as tall as the 110-story buildings. They've got nothing clobbered them. And so if it was 600 feet, they must have damage. That's the top of building 6. Hardly anything fell on it, and you can still see building 7. And we just remember this dark smoke, dust, whatever you want to call it, but just remember this dark cloud coming out from building 6, because I will be referencing that later. And then just another view again. There you can see building 4. The large portion of the building over there just isn't there anymore. Where did it go? And once again, this is World Trade Center 2, the South Tower. It pretty much went level to the lobby. Nobody survived. Here you can see a part of the core, but not nearly as much of it was left as with the North Tower. And this is just, once again, West Street right over there. You can see the ambulance that was in the front of the picture a short while ago. Right over there, you've got a small little stub left of the 22-story building 3, Marriott Hotel, with the outer shell of World Trade Center 2 left, World Trade Center 1, World Trade Center 6, the Verizon building. So once again, they state that everything was ejected laterally, 600 feet, but all you see is dust, aluminium cladding, and a lot of paper. Just to give you this is to give you an idea just of how big and huge those core columns and everything was. And you should have a hell of a lot of it lying on the ground. So the question is, if we took all the steel that was found on ground zero, how much of the towers would we have been able to rebuild? And I would contest that you wouldn't even build an eighth of one of the towers. Just another idea of how massive those steel columns were. That's actually Dr. Wood. And again, what made these columns pretzel up like that? And this is the satellite picture on the 15th of September. Once again, you can see how empty the insides of Building 6 is. World Trade Center 7. And again, please, people, show me where all the supposed steel went. It's not on the ground. They never show you pictures like this. They just tell you that's where everything went. So what did we see on 9/11? We saw when steel became dust. And this brings us to a quick video that I want to play, because on September 12, there was a lot of people noticing the same things that I'm pointing out to you now. I only mentioned this on the 12th and the 13th, and then all of a sudden, references to this just went absolutely quiet. Nobody talked about it anymore.
Stephanopoulos is down in Lower Manhattan today. George, I don't know if you heard a little earlier me raise this question, which was actually raised by ABC's Jackie Judd as we look at these areas down below. When you look at where the towers used to stand, there is surprisingly so little rubble. Where did all the rubble go?
It's a very good question, Peter, and I have asked some people who've been doing some of the rescue and recovery work this morning. If you look behind me, you can see the very remains, the skeletal remains of the World Trade Center. And one volunteer, Robert Gerlinski, explained to me the reason there's so little rubble is that all of it simply fell down into the ground and was pulverized, evaporated.
Where did the towers go? That's the title of your book. Where did the towers
Actually,
go?
it was that conversation between Peter Jennings and George Stephanopoulos that inspired this title. You know, where is all the rubble? Where did it go? And I was eager that day, like, you know, yeah, I'm glad somebody's asking that. So we have this image of before and after. The little, you know, yellow box on the bottom corner is all that's left of the buildings. We've got to remember what used to be there. These huge buildings. And, you know, they're gone. And just this little stub of a part of a building is all that's left.
Yeah, once again, over here, you've got the outer parts of the South Tower that was right next to it. Where 110-story building went away. This 22-story building went away. And there's only aluminium cladding, mostly, and dust.
I love these graphics created by Adam Dwyer because they give you a real sense of how much of the building actually went missing. Here's a shot of World Trade Center 1 rubble, and in the background we can see Building 7 still frothing up into dust. So we know it was before 5:20 p.m. that day. So the story that they shipped all that steel off to China just doesn't make sense. They were doing a bucket brigade for a while there, just moving stuff with buckets because they didn't want to, you know, hurt any of the potential survivors under the rubble. In the book Report from Ground Zero, Assistant Chief Firefighter Harry Myers says, "I never saw a file cabinet, never saw a desk, a chair, never saw a telephone, never saw any type of office furniture. There's no glass. It just disappeared and has become part of this fluffy white or gray dust." They actually only found one filing cabinet, if you can believe that, and it didn't even look like a filing cabinet. It was melted down to about the size of a basketball, but miraculously, it still had unburnt file folders and money inside of it that they were able to return to Ben and Jerry's.
Now, this is a really bizarre artifact. It's a Bible artifact that's in the 9/11 museum. The Pope even came to visit this item. Folks often like to point out that formerly molten metal that was on the page, it wasn't molten because it was hot. The pages would have burned up.
Sure.
It was liquid metal because of another reason. This is the elevator map of what was left. Here's what should have been there before. And right here, people survived in that little hump at the bottom of Building 3. The rest of Building 3 was gone.
So 16 people actually survived inside the collapse of the North Tower, and they were in stairwell B in the center of the building.
I rolled to a corner and basically went into a fetal position and just waited for the end.
My helmet started flying off my head. I had forgotten to snap my helmet. So I grabbed my helmet. I guess instinctually, I just pulled myself down into the corner.
The collapse of the North Tower created a massive rush of air.
I was blown down 6 stories down to the first floor, and all I could remember while I was being blown down was, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. There wasn't any time to think about anything.
The 110-story tower disintegrated in just 10 seconds.
It was that fast, yet for me it was kind of slow motion too at the same time. And I remember thinking to myself, I said, oh shit, this is it, we didn't make it.
Okay, 10-4, North Tower, stairwell B isn't going on the 2nd floor.
The location given by Jay Jonas was unbelievable to the firefighters listening. The North Tower no longer existed. They asked for his location again.
He asked me that a couple times, and one time he asked me that. Somebody else got on the radio and said, where's the North Tower?
We saw nothing we could recognize in the fields. We expected to see chairs and file cabinets and what was left of offices. Everything was reduced to the finest state. It basically looked like mountains of dirt.
This dome of this 44-story building is right across the street from Tower 1.
It's not even touched.
Right, it's not clobbered.
There's nothing on it.
Right. Building 7 went away that afternoon, and over by the post office, you can see it didn't even spill completely across the street.
one of the key pieces of evidence which shows that this is what happened, that the buildings did indeed turn to dust before they hit the ground, or mostly to dust, is the seismic evidence.
Okay, so this next video that I wanted to play, I'm not going to play it in full, because when I uploaded it to my YouTube channel, even though nobody gets mentioned or anything like that, they basically go through the evidence with regards to building 6 and it not being clobbered by anything, got flagged for hate speech. So you can find that on my Substack, my Odyssey, and all that kind of stuff. So let's just quickly run through a short section. It's actually a 5-minute one, but I'm just going to take like a minute here or there so that we don't get flagged for this 5-minute section.
All right, yeah, hopefully it doesn't get flagged. We'll see.
Once again, just showing the lack of rubble for the North Tower. The stairwell B and our little ambulance, they didn't get clobbered whatsoever. And again, the view with aluminium cladding, a lot of dust, but no 600-foot ejected steel anywhere. Just dust and aluminium cladding. Let's go back to the end of the video once again. Here's the questions to ask. So where did the contents of the towers go?
Yeah, and this documentary is the one that I've been doubling over.
Yeah.
So in a few years, I'll be done all of it.
Yeah, there's 14 hours of that you've got to work through.
Yeah, yeah.
So that just basically gives you an idea of that. And then this is a little snippet that I found somewhere that is rather telling, because you can see something happening here. That is building 3 that's left. You know, just as the South Tower was meeting its demise. Now, keep your eye on this section over here, because you can obviously see there's solid material that's falling with a major dust trail. Who knows how far this piece actually fell. You've got some wee checks over here that's also just frothing up as it's falling. It's a short 7-second clip, so we'll watch it 2 or 3 times, and just keep your eyes on that, because here it's still, if that's 3 stories, that's most probably 10 stories high. Yeah, that's half of building 3, and this part over here never reaches the ground. So let's have a look.
I've never seen this footage actually. This looks pretty remarkable.
So yeah, they didn't slam to the ground. They basically turned to dust in mid-air. And just to prove that this is an amateur video, basically just after both towers went away, and he's just looking at what was left. The dust is still in the air, and it's rather eerie.
I'm in ground zero. I managed to get in. I have the most amazing pictures to take. You've never seen anything like this in your life. There are cars burning all over the place. This is two World Trade Centers on the ground. On the level right here, ground level. I'm gonna try to take some still photos.
So that's right.
Trees were just rooted, knocked down. It was unbelievable.
Dude, this is worse than fraud.
fire truck's windows blown out, buried in debris. Car just blew up.
Okay, so that's a car that just blew up after the towers went away. So there are people that are saying, okay, fine, but the dust cloud had either molten metal or had something to do with nukes or whatever. So why are the cars exploding now after the fact? So just remember that, because we do have a section with regards to all the toasted cars.
God bless America. I've never seen anything like this, my dear Jesus. This is the World Trade Center on the floor. Words cannot express what I feel, what has been done to this country. Nobody will ever know.
Paper.
I'm in ground zero. I managed to get in.
Okay, so that pretty much, with regards to the debris pile height and saying that it's debunked by recognizing that 90% of the Twin Towers mass fell outside their footprints. Sorry, people. Gene, please come show us where you think it is, because I can't seem to find it. We can now move over to his second point, where he basically says the damage to the core box columns. Due would need precise targeting features, making it implausible for the observed straight and horizontal breaks in core columns. Once again, I refer him to chapter 12, pages 247 to 256. There's also 2 videos that extensively discusses the cores, but we can't play it now because they are around about 16 minutes each. That is the one. It is on my Odyssey channel. You'll be able to find it there. Then the second one, it also goes into it in quite detail of what we would have expected the to be. You can go, just go look for it on my Odyssey channel and just screenshot this, or come back to the recording and just search that in my content tabs. If I just want to show you my Odyssey channel, it's got just over 500 videos on there, various playlists with regards to the various talking points that have been raised through the years. So just come have a look at them. We've got the whole observable evidence series right over here, the Alchemy series by Chris Hampton, formerly Wolf Clan Media, then he changed the name to Open Cage Media, and then both of these channels basically disappeared. I also just want to remind you guys, I've put 3 documentaries together myself. Oops, let me just go back over there. Minimize that. View playlist. So September 11, the power patterns and identification, that's basically just the background that takes you through all the various hidden technologies and things that have been pushed through. It's a nice short 1 hour, 15 minutes. Then I dabbled in the plane issues with regards to Twin Towers, Shanksville, and obviously the Pentagon. And then we've got the 2 hour extended cut with all my interactions with the various truther talking heads, where I talk to David Chandler, Richard Gage, Jonathan Cole, Wayne Costa, Ted Walters and all of those guys. So that's very interesting because I've set it up in such a way where I ask the question, they give their answer, and then with video evidence, I prove where they are completely not giving you all the information that you actually need. So let's go back. We've got to go to the damage of the core box columns. And let's get that ready to rumble over here. Also, when they talk about this, they have mentioned the box columns. This is the famous picture that gets used to basically say, no, but that's proof of thermite incendiaries. There were actually pictures by AP that showed where that column was still in good nick, and when they basically cut it. And then you've got the big question with regards to how much thermite would have been needed to take down those towers. And this is rather telling. I've got an issue with both of these gentlemen that are discussing it. I've already written an article about them, so just go to my Substack and then just go read what I had to say with regards to Jim Fetzer and Joe Olson.
So I'm very, very troubled to have been forced to that conclusion that the man I made co-chair of Scholars for 9/11 Truth when I founded it in December of 2005 actually was an expert in promoting what I regard as a limited hangout, the nano-thermite theory, which, as I've explained, cannot possibly explain the data. In fact, just to illustrate its absurdity, Niels Harrit, who was an associate professor at the University of Chemistry at the University of Copenhagen, emeritus, when asked how much nanothermite it would take to destroy a twin tower, he said 29,000 metric tons. 29,000 metric tons of nanothermite to destroy a tower, Joe. I mean, how absurd is that?
Yes, on their misinformation publication that they put out with one of their DVDs, the architects and engineers for 911 Truth said that it takes 0.13 pounds of thermite to melt each pound of steel. Well, if you're missing 100,000 pounds of steel, tons of steel, how many tons of thermite? Exactly. Yeah, that they've absolutely proven themselves to be relaying false information if they can't even do the basic physics involved in that calculation.
Yeah, it's deliberate obfuscation, Joe. I mean, this is misleading.
Okay, so coming back to the thermite cuts and everything, let's listen to the guys who were busy with the cleanup, the size of the steel core columns and the outer columns, and how long it actually took for them to cut through all of these. This is also gives you an idea of just how ridiculous everything is.
You can see we've been taking pretty big chunks. The three pieces that are left standing there, each one of them weighs about 55 ton to 60 ton a piece. So we've been taking chunks down around the 55 to 60 ton.
You can see where they've made the cuts along right above. That's the bow tie connection. They're cutting it about 3 to 5 foot above the bow tie connection where it starts into the forming of the candlestick. They've got 3 candles left to cut. It goes accordingly, weather permitting, by midnight tonight. The last 3 candles of the northeast facade will be down to the bow tie connection.
So what you also have connected to these thermite lances is oxygen hoses. And we will touch on the oxygen hoses later on as well.
Iron oxide and aluminium powder. You mix those two together, obviously fairly freely available, and you put in a hot fuse. You need a hot fuse of several hundred degrees centigrade to set it off, so you can't just start it with a match. You need something like a magnesium strip. You know what the more common name for iron oxide is?
No.
Rust.
Rust. Oh, okay.
So going back to the World Trade Center, what did we have as part of the structure? Well, we had hundreds of steel girders. These steel girders have been standing in air for 30 years, approximately 30 years, perhaps slightly longer even. What do steel girders do when they've been standing in air for 30 years? They rust. And the shiny silvery exterior of the World Trade Center was, guess what, folks? It was an aluminium alloy. So for those guys like Stephen E. Jones and Richard Gage to say that thermite was found in the World Trade Center dust or unreacted thermite, well, what they're saying really, and what they're not saying to you, is that the remains of the building were found in the dust of the remains of the building. That's what they're saying. Or what made up the building was found in the remains of the building. So this talk of thermite is a cover story. Now, of course, they will argue, oh, but that's, we know that this wasn't made up from the building because it's got this special signature and we found nanothermite. But they haven't got any evidence for that. They don't want people to know and understand and realize and become aware of that the buildings turn to dust before they hit the ground, because that is a new type of process.
Within seconds, the fiery concoction eats through the body, spraying molten thermite into the engine beneath.
Okay, so getting back to the cool columns as well, this is a very, very interesting observation that was also made. I don't think a lot of people know about this, so give this a quick listening to, because it might just bend your brain.
The whole theory that the thing pancake came down on itself, crushed itself, I don't see any signs of crushing. And when I say that, the wheat checks, and the wheat checks are the pieces, they almost look like a hashtag. Everybody knows what a hashtag looks like, right? They almost look like that, but what they are is they're made out of box steel, so they're hollow. And they're box steel that's welded together to look like that hashtag. And at the ends of them, there's 4 holes in the top, and they bolt to the next one that comes down. So these things are just all bolted together. The thing that really has got my attention when I seen that is that the end of these beams are perfect. The 4 bolts are gone. Now remember, these beams are made out of steel, and the bolts that are holding together are made out of hardened steel. So they're probably 5, maybe 10 times as hard as the steel they're holding together. And normally, that's the last thing to go. So if this building actually did collapse or fall upon itself or something, those wheat checks, those ends would be ripped apart. Those bolts would still be there holding the pieces of the flange together, but what those flanges are welded to which should be ripped. I don't see any signs. What I see is perfectly square ends of those wheat checks. Even if they rip the bolts through, those holes would be all elongated, torn, that whole end would be ripped out. It's just perfect holes without these hardened bolts. As a mechanic, I've been, I bolt frames together, you extend chassis, you make sure you use hardened bolts, hardened washers, and when you see things fail, the bolts are still there. They're the last thing to let go because they're hard. They're made to hang on. So there's no signs of pancaking. You look at the pictures, you look at like the cover there, there's a better one over there even on this book. You look at the cascading coming down. That's not pancaking. To me, it's cascading. If everything was supposed to be pancaking, you wouldn't see that corner of the outer shell of those wheat checks hanging there with, oh, another piece fell off. How do they fall off? How did that one piece come out of that wheat check with all those hardened bolts on it and not show any signs of stress. There's no signs of stress on most of the metal. You look at those weak checks, every one of them, whether it's stuck in a building across the road, which some of them did, like these things travel distance. And you could see some of them that were falling were turning to dust in midair. People go, well, that's just dust on them. I'm going, well, you'd have to have dust 3 feet thick on each floor to mount the amount of dust. Not even in the concrete that's in there is going to create that amount of dust. So I'm looking at this picture and I see a lot of stuff in here. Street light with the wires still intact, all the signs on it. You got another street light, or yeah, it's just a street light with a mile-per-hour sign on it, and you've got more of them over here. 210-story buildings just came down. There they are, and that survived somehow. And the ends of these beams, if you look at each weak check, it's like they come unbolted. You look at them, none of them are half ripped or half torn. They've completely, perfectly come unbolted. You look at the evidence. This is like failure analysis. You look at it and go, okay, what does the evidence say? The evidence saying that this thing come apart. It didn't get crushed. These aren't crushed. Nothing's crushed here.
And yeah, for the planar.
It's important to realize that the towers were designed for airliner impacts. John Skilling, the structural engineer in charge, said that in the event of an airliner impact, quote, the building structure would still be there.
The building was designed to have a fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time. I believe that the building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door, this intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting.
Okay, so his next point of contention that he raised was with regards to the fall of the spire. Now, everybody talks about the North Tower spire, but we first are going to look at the South Tower spire. But just to expand on his assertion, he basically says the assertion that steel turned to dust is challenged by the spire falling after being shaken. When you get to the North Tower spire, you'll see no shaking is going on. And he basically says likely by explosive charges. Now, he just needs to go and read chapter 8, pages 131 to 169. But let's go and look at the South Tower spire that nobody really talks about. So this is the initial disintegration of the South Tower, peeling like a banana on the outsides. Still keeps on going. If you look here, and we're going to play a video in a bit showing you the from this, looking from this angle in a helicopter, where you'll be able to see the shadow of the inner core of the building, because after a moment, initially, you still had this piece of the core still standing. And it basically fizzled away. If you really time it from the initial disintegration initiation until this whole spire and everything was gone, it was around about 33 seconds or so. And here you can still see a little stub left over there as it's going down. And then everything just gets a blanket of dust. And here you can see from a different angle there, you still have parts of the core left. This is a very good picture here as well, where you can see that's the inner core that was just fizzling away in real time. We'll see that in the video shortly. This is once again another angle where you can see the core, and just another close-up with regards to that. So let's go over to the video. Also, now when it starts to disintegrate, keep your eye on the what we think is obviously fire, but also you'll see it basically get more intense as the building goes away. And if you look at all the conversations that people had through the years, everybody was talking about everything that was falling to the sides and all of that kind of stuff, but nobody really paid attention to the shadow of the inner core. So in the first 30 seconds, you'll see it. We'll maybe watch it 2 or 3 times. And also notice the static interference. Keep your eye on the shadow in the middle of the building, because you'll be able to see the core, and you'll be able to see how it fizzles down and just goes away as well. Yeah, it just goes. And boof, over there, the core's gone as well. Let's look at it again. See the fire also there. We will see that now intensify as the building is disintegrating. There it goes. Why is that happening over there? Once again, peeling like a banana. You can see a part of the core that's still there. And then it just starts dropping as well into dust. And let's play it one more time without me telling you what to see.
Yeah, you said this before. It was a bit hard to see, but I think I kind of see the shadow now. Let's just see it again.
You've got the pictures that and poof, the rest of the core is gone. They do go into some more slow-mos and everything of this. I just want to keep it short so that we can just run through everything and not have this too long. But if you download the file, you can go through all of these videos that I'm sharing now in your own time to verify what I've been pointing out. So now we move over to the North Tower that gets discussed by everybody on a regular basis. But once again, the South Tower also shows exactly the same type of weirdness that was going on. This is various angles that we see, but especially this one, you can see nice and clear points with solid steel that's still there, with the insides of the core just falling down. You can't see any thermite flashes going off. In the video evidence, you never hear any loud bangs or anything like that. So we will have other video where MES and I collaborated with regards to the Spire. So we'll have a look at that shortly, because what we are going to be showing you is how the Spire drops down vertically, and there isn't a 900-foot hole that it could be falling into, and it's basically in line with the height of the Eiffel Tower. So let's go have a look at this video. This is a sped up video with regards to the disintegration. I think just after the South Tower went down. So something that you've got to look at, as soon as the North Tower is gone, you've got the World Trade 7 over here, but just after the North Tower disappears, you'll see a secondary, you can't really call it an explosion, but you'll see there's a new darker cloud emanating out of the World Trade Center complex. And I would say that is Building 6, busy getting its big hole. This is just a nice sped up view. Oh, and at the same time, if you look at the amount of smoke, dust, whatever is happening over here, the amount coming out of here, just you can't explain for that small little section over there the amount of smoke that's coming out of here. And remember, when the firemen got to the impact site, they said there were small isolated fires and they only need 2 hoses to put it out. So the so-called fires were already dying down. So just look at the amount that's coming out of the top of that building. That's just way too much.
And yeah, this is a 45 times speed. So each second is about roughly a minute. Just think about how much dust that's actually going up.
Yeah. And then you've got the side of the building also lathering up, spire gone, and now you'll see the second. There comes the second initiation of who knows what, and that, I think that's World Trade Center 6 starting to get its big hole. Okay, so we can move over to the Spire collab that we did with regards to the North Tower. What we will be doing here, and something that I need to bring your attention to, is we will be seeing just before the disintegration, there was a strange static interference just before the North Tower started to disintegrate. You'll also see the building peeling away, leaving the core column standing. So you've got people pushing the conventional controlled demolition using explosives, and more vigilantly, the proponents of thermite would have you believe that the dust settle on these steel beams before they drop down. This dust, they argue, is what makes it seem like dust is trailing solid steel falling vertically. Then you've got to ask your question when you look at this video, does it seem like solid steel dropping down into a 900 feet hole? Or does it look like the steel is becoming non-solid structures and turning to dust whilst it's traveling downwards? The thermite proponents will and have argued secondary thermite charges broke up this 900-foot steel spire, yet you can't, in the local videos and stuff, you don't hear any explosions, you don't see thermite flashes going off or anything like that. And that is why we put in a comparison of what happens when you blow a steel structure apart, and you will see that the two look nothing alike. The most important thing to remember in this video that I'm going to show you is the bottom of that North Tower, 16 people survived in stairwell B. So the question is, how did they survive if there was steel raining down from above, as other people would like you to believe? So let's just jump into this video and you can decide for yourself.
Yes, I am, Michael. We just saw that as well. The second tower, the only one that was standing, tower number 1.
Good Lord. There are no words. You can see large pieces of the building falling. You can see the smoke rising. You can see a portion of the side of the building now just being covered on the right side as I look at it, covered in smoke.
There are so many sensitive issues to be dealt with, not the...
Okay, something in this video over here. Look at these pieces over here. That was columns that were standing vertically. They're going to be falling over to the right-hand side. By the end of the video, we're going to show another view of these pieces of core falling to the right. So keep your eye on that. We'll maybe play it twice.
Least of which will be security for the participants
3 of them.
In those marketplaces downtown, the New York.
Smoke.
There are so many sensitive issues to be dealt with, not the least of which will be security for the participants in those marketplaces downtown, the New York Stock Exchange being the principal exchange in Lower Manhattan. It is likely, one would assume, that because of the worry that disrupting the financial markets could be worse than letting them open up and respond to the situation, that tomorrow may be the only day on which the various exchanges are closed. That remains to be seen.
Adopted Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana, which is just where Arkansas and Texas and Louisiana all come together at an Air Force base out of the way, and he...
So these cores aren't being bumped
40,000
by
feet.
anything.
Look at it, John. Look at it.
Here's building 7, which is a 47-story building. It's like 650 feet tall, approximately. This has got to be over that.
It physically disintegrates in front of your eyes. Not concrete, but steel.
You can see all of this just frothing up into dust. And it's also blowing downward. That's about 700 feet tall. If that thing tipped over, it would take out a few blocks worth of buildings. How's it going to go straight down? You got a 700-foot hole in the ground, drop it into?
Those are the 3. Right at the bottom of the screen, you can see building 7.
Everything that's going on around our world, we don't see it.
So let's slow-mo it quickly so that you can have another look. Solid. Not solid. Three, 2, 1, go. Remember, 16 people survived at the bottom of that.
There's a whole lot of evidence and very weird things that happen at the World Trade Center. Okay, there are about 10,000 file cabinets that are missing. There's about 20,000 floor trusses and 220 acres of metal decking that's missing. The question is, where did it go?
Now, on that point, even the nuke proponents seem to agree with us. So let's have a quick listen to what Fitzer has to say.
And indeed, look at this. This is an absolutely fantastic photograph. You can see the buildings. This is the North Tower being converted into millions of cubic yards of very fine dust. And Jeremy, there in the foreground, that's building 7, that 47-story structure that would only come down 7 hours later.
That's, I think, the same photograph that Judy Wood uses on her book, on the cover of her book.
Oh yeah, sure. And I'll talk about Judy. I mean, she when I talk about how it was actually done, yeah, Judy calls this a bubbler. It's a fantastic photograph. Judy also emphasizes here the core columns of the North Tower being subjected to molecular disintegration. So here you can see them turning into dust. This is the final remnant of the North Tower turning into dust. Now, what I'm pointing out here is this is no collapse. This is the utter demolition of these buildings by some very powerful source of energy that cannot possibly have been accomplished by conventional explosives or even by nano-thermite, as I'm going to explain. Here, and indeed, look at this.
Okay, so with regards to Gene's point of the fall of the spire, the assertion that steel turned to dust is challenged by the spire falling after being shaken, likely by explosive charges, is just not feasible if you ask me. So on to his next point with regards to the toasted cars. So he makes mention of toasted tops of vehicles. He states the damage to the vehicles is explained by partially unignited thermite falling through the air, not by dew. Now, he should really read chapter 11, pages 213 to 246. So let's just quickly go through some of the claims that they made with regards to toasted vehicles. And it's been co-opted by Richard Gage. And basically what they contest is toasted cars from molten iron droplets. Evidence of high temperatures, corrosion is observed on about 1,000 cars near the World Trade Center. The corrosion occurred on the car tops, yet the paint was usually intact below, consistent with a corrosive cloud settling. So we'll work through that and then just basically show that some of this just couldn't be due to corrosive cloud settling. Especially here, you can see that the underside of this car is burning. All the marble in this facade of the building is missing. We can go into the strange anomalies with the windows, but you really need to read the book. We're talking about the toasted cars right now. Now, molten iron droplets did this to this car. Come now, really? And then if you look at this vehicle, we'll go into depth in some of the videos with regards to that. Now, obviously, this car was towed. There's a main issue with people have an issue with Dr. Wood because certain vehicles were apparently towed, but that doesn't take away from the fact of what happened to the vehicles. So this is obviously where it's been moved to. You can see the back of the car isn't damaged. You can see that the lights on top, not all of them are melted. You'll also see, if you read the book, that some of the rubber in the car wasn't damaged either. What if it was a hot cloud, which it wasn't, how did this engine melt away? And why is only the front of this car burning? If it was a complete cloud, the rest is just not damaged whatsoever. And here you can see the weird car again. This is also very interesting. You can see in the background you've got Building 7 still standing. This bus is completely toasted. Here you can see the tree next to which it's standing. And then obviously when Building 7 went away, this bus moved. So what caused that? There is a section with regards to levitation, but once again, we're not getting into it because Gene didn't touch on it. And this is the toasted car park. This is around about 3 blocks away. If you want a little bit more detail with regards to that, we can have please go read my article with regards to the toasted cars, because it goes into various aspects of exactly how far that toasted car park was. Goes into great detail with the fact that these cars just started to spontaneously combust after the towers went away. So let's go on to the videos real quick. Just get that. What you will see in this initial video is the building coming down, and then something strange basically happens. You can start hearing alarms going off, and we'll get into that as soon as you can start hearing it. But the main thing is he's very close to the building disintegrating and the cloud coming over him, and around him you'll see that all the cars around him are still fine. And he didn't get burned up either.
I hope I live. I hope I live. It's coming down on me. Here it comes. I'm getting behind a car. It's incredible. Okay, I'm gonna have to go find people who need help, because I don't think I'm one of them. You okay, sir? Okay. Can I just get a toot off your respirator? Can I get a toot? I'm just getting a couple of clean breaths. That's good. Okay. Back to you. This is the car I hid behind. It saved my life.
So those cars are fine.
Wait, maybe this one.
And just want to chime in. You can hear the firefighter alarms going off.
Yeah, I was going to mention that now.
There's all these noises. I don't know what it is. They say someone needs help.
Okay, so the noises that he's talking about there, those are the fireman locator alarms. So basically, as far as I know, as soon as a firefighter falls down, then these things start chiming. I've got an article on this coming out next week, Friday, and every Friday for the rest of the year, you'll have an article coming out on my Substack that goes into this. They basically found the locator alarms for the firefighters, but they weren't attached to firefighters. They were all gone. So nobody mentions that either. So I just want to forward this a little bit more so that you can basically see the damage to certain vehicles after you've now seen the vehicles where this gentleman was, and they were not affected whatsoever because you saw the dust on them, but other vehicles didn't fare as well. And you can also see the static appearance as soon as you got closer to the building, to the World Trade Center. So what caused this static?
You know what? Why don't we just set this up as a little mobile hospital unit right here, okay?
All the vehicles started combusting afterwards. Why? I just got used to the map. I think this is building 4, because you can see a section of the personal there. Look at this vehicle over here. Those straight barriers in it. Oh, the whole stuff. And if it was supposedly a hot dust cloud, why aren't these flags burned. Why are they still intact? So sorry, it wasn't a hot dust cloud whatsoever. So let's get into the second video discussing the toasted cars.
Toasted cars. We got to get to the toasted cars. I say they're toast. They're history. I can't say they're burnt because I don't know that. But they're toast. I just decided to use that word to say something happened, messed them up. You can't fix it. You got to get a new one.
Engine blocks missing.
But this one is quite interesting in that it has an abrupt, toasted, not toasted. Like it's like it's on the showroom floor. It just had a new wax job back there. What abruptly stops a real fire, a regular fire, doesn't do that. It would be lapping around the corner. Also, why aren't the lights melted?
I didn't hear of any fireballs rolling down the streets, and cars were going into spontaneous combustion. They were there was no fireball that hit them. They just simply burst into flames for one reason or another. There was even a car park blocks away that the cars started smoking and catching fire, and no one questioned that.
Various detractors like to say that the cars got towed. I don't know about how some of them were, but I know these were not towed. You can see them before and after. And you can see cars adjacent to each other. One might be okay, and the other one isn't.
The other one's fine.
There are witness accounts of what happened to some of these cars too. For example, Patricia Ondrovich, who was a first responder, she, I think, came out of World Trade Center 7, and the cars were exploding right next to her.
The FDNY vehicles were remarkable. There were enormous ladder trucks, pumpers that looked like they were thrown around the fields like toys, and they reeked of unimaginable loss.
Okay, so the next video, I can't really remember where I found it, but this is an interview with an EMT.
Yeah.
And what she has to say here is mind-blowing with regards to what was happening with the cars. And yeah, just listen to what she has to say, because this is most probably scrubbed off the internet. And that's somebody who was there. And yeah, just please listen to this.
Your name is?
Jessica Maldonado.
And where were you and what were you on 9/11, the day of the 9/11 attack?
I was an EMT in New York City. My office was from the Bronx, New York, and I witnessed everything that day. I was on duty that day. And what happened that day was a lot of confusion, a lot of hurt. It was just, it was horrible.
It wasn't what they told us.
It was not what they told us. It was not what was on the media. It was totally opposite.
Totally opposite.
A lot of the stuff that I witnessed was not, was covered by the media. It was not shown. One of the things that I saw was we were helping the firefighters put out a fire 2 blocks away from the buildings. And a bomb squad came and they told us not to go in that block. And we were all like, okay, why? Why won't we go in that block? And we, stood back. As soon as we stood back from that block, the cars were just exploding, just coming up.
Individual, like each one had bombs in them.
I don't know if it was bombs, but they were exploding up.
Wow.
It looked like someone put bombs under them or something was in it. But how did the bomb squad know to tell us to move away from them,
exactly,
even before we were going into that block?
Wow.
Yeah.
How many people witnessed this with you?
It was quite a few. It was a group of us. It was at least 10, 15 of us.
And they took pictures?
Yes. They took pictures of the surroundings. They took pictures of a lot of the flames, a lot of the burning building. Right before one of the buildings came down, they took pictures of that. We took pictures with the disposable cameras that we had in our rigs. And we always have a crash kit in each of the in the rigs. And that night, when we were all home or wherever we were at, we got a phone call from our superiors telling us to hand over the disposable cameras. Government officials wanted the cameras. They did not want us to develop any of the pictures that we had. But we kept them. We all have pictures.
God bless you. That experience that affected you to the point you actually quit, what happened?
I did. I quit. I didn't go back to the service. I mean, it wasn't that exactly that made me quit, but it opened my eyes to a lot of the stuff that we see in the media, a lot of the things that the government talks about. The truth, you have to look for the truth. Don't believe what they tell you. Just don't believe what you see out there. You have to see it for yourself.
God bless you. Where do you go to get your news now? What do you do?
Now, sometimes I read up on it, sometimes I just watch TV, but I don't do much of that. Unless I see it for myself, because I know what they're doing.
I'm trying to. What else is there? Anything else about that day that we should be aware of that have not been told?
A lot of the charities people gave money to. A lot of the like Red Cross and all that. They helped, but not enough. They were just, I mean, the firefighters needed so much help. They still need help. The NYPD still needs help. Sydney still needs help. Why are their funds being cut?
From this experience, who do you think is really responsible for the attacks of 9/11?
I think the government knew all along. The government knew. I'm not too sure who. Like I said, I don't know who to believe, but I know there's something out there that they're not telling us. They're not.
God bless you. I mean, really, for everything you went through and being able to go ahead and still speak the truth, not be afraid to do that, because that's super important. I mean, you're an eyewitness to history. You are a part of it, and listening, and what you have is golden. It should be heard. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your stand.
Thank you. Your name is?
Jessica.
Okay, so that covers the toasted cars. So, yeah.
I just want to chime in. So I was trying to chime in earlier, but then I realized my microphone was muted because someone was complaining that you could hear my sniffing and so on. So I had it muted whenever you're presenting. But I just wanted to make a point about the firefighter locator alarms. This is actually from a message from Paul Lovelace. So he said that they sound off if they detect no movement or if the firefighters lay horizontal. So that's why the locator alarms go off. So that's pretty interesting note there. Yeah. So I just wanted to chime that in for that.
Yeah. On what's the other guy's channel's name again? Who did the whole video?
Oh, that was Reality Access.
Yeah.
Richard.
You should maybe share that link if you can.
I will do that right now.
Because he did a whole video on the firemen and the locator alarms.
Yeah, thanks for that. I will send that in the chat.
Yeah. Okay, and then now his next point of contention is the Once-Molten Iron Microspheres. So he basically states the presence of molten iron spheres is explained by thermitic materials not addressed by the due hypothesis. If you bothered to read chapter 15, pages 321 to 339, it's extensively discussed there. So we're just going to go over this short little video. Oh, no, not really short, but let's just investigate the molten iron.
Fusing of dissimilar material.
Here's the famous.
Need to go to the 5-minute mark. And let's have a listen.
There was tritium there. It was measured at the World Trade Center, was definitely above background levels.
Iron-rich microspheres in the World Trade Center dust. They'd said that this was a fingerprint of thermite, so they were saying that these spheres were caused by thermites or nano-thermite.
Thermite, the observation of these iron-bearing spheres, tiny spheres in the dust in abundance.
But I'd also been aware at that point that Stephen E. Jones was involved in cold fusion research in the 1980s.
1989, when this physics panel voted, Stephen E. Jones was running that panel, or
he led the vote.
He led the vote
Let's discuss the iron found in the dust.
Organic material was also found, which shows it was not from a high-temperature process.
There was just as much zinc as there was iron in the World Trade Center dust. Dr. Judy Wood has pointed out the fact that the boiling point for zinc is much lower than iron. So we have apparent evidence of high heat, and at the same time, no evidence of heat.
So we got these iron-rich microspheres in the World Trade Center dust, and I'd heard about these elsewhere, being found in the soil underneath where a crop circle had formed. And I looked at this research by W.C. Levengood. Looking at the pictures there and looking at the dimensions of these spheres, they were of the same dimensions as the spheres that were mentioned in the Stephen E. Jones paper, and that it was in the order of 10 to 40 microns in diameter. That's less than the width of a human hair, very tiny.
Basically the same size as the spheres found at the World Trade Center.
What were these doing in crop circles? And as W.C. Levengood observed, these were magnetized, and he said that they seemed to have been formed in the presence of a strong magnetic field.
A lot of folks say a nuke was used in 9/11. Well, there wasn't the ionizing radiation, but there's transmutation.
For these transmutational results, the metal forming another metal.
We had these iron spheres on the Tunguska River, another mysterious energy phenomena.
On June 30th, 1908, a remote area of Siberia known as Tunguska is devastated by a mysterious force 2,000 times greater than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. It left no crater or residue.
These iron-rich particles are definitely magnetic. They were formed in a magnetic field, similar to the crop circles. So we have these iron spheres at the World Trade Center, and we also have magnetized iron spheres found in crop circles. It seems Stephen E. Jones knows what to cover up here. Some people think all crop circles are made with planks of wood, but if you do a bit of digging, you'll find this is not true. There are some considered authentic or non-man-made.
If you want to learn more about this, watch Richard D. Hall's film, Crop Circles, The Hidden Truth.
The possibility of crystal growth seems remote. The degree of pressure known to be involved in causing crystal growth in sedimentary deposits would have, had it been present, completely obliterated the plants, and the 600 to 800 centigrade temperatures over a period of several hours known to be necessary to promote such crystal growth in the laboratory would have, in the crop circle field, incinerated any plant present. Additionally, the very brief bursts of possibly intense microwave radiation thought to be the cause of node elongation and the creation of expulsion cavities through the heating and expansion of the internal stem moisture could not account for crystal growth.
What's being explained here is an apparent appearance of high heat, but at the same time, no real evidence of high heat. In other words, the crops would have been obliterated from heat if heat caused the crystal growth.
I've been levitated off the ground in a crop circle, much to my amazement, which still baffles me to this day. I never would have exchanged.
How high up did you go? Just a few inches, or did you go way up there?
I have no idea to this day.
And it picked me up and threw me up against the wall of the building I was. You were picked up off the ground. Physically picked up off the ground.
So we have these levitation effects on 9/11, and we also have them in certain crop circles, the ones that are considered non-man-made. I find this statement by Nick Pope very telling. I had to refute the bizarre idea that the formations were caused by the testing of space-based laser or directed energy weapons, and dispel suggestions that the media coverage of the issue had been stifled by the use of D-notices. D-notices are basically something the media uses to get rid of a story that breaks the Official Secrecy Act.
Fusing of dissimilar material.
Okay, so that basically covers the molten iron microspheres. The next point that he wants to bring up is with regards to molten metal. He basically states, Dew cannot explain observations of molten metal pouring from the World Trade Center 2 with temperatures exceeding those from jet fuel or of office fires. Please, so all he needs to do is read chapter 17, pages 349 to page 394 to get the answer to his question. So in line with the previous video when we were talking about the boiling points or the melting points of different stuff. You had strange clumps of coins with different melting points all fused together. We can still talk about the only filing cabinet that was found. And then you've got John Hutchinson with his aluminium with a piece of wood embedded inside of it. Then getting back to our perception management aspects, the picture on the right is the picture that basically was used to propagate the whole idea of molten metal and all of that kind of stuff. But the actual picture is on the left with a white light before it was subtly changed to fit the narrative that they wanted to put out there. And just to prove that, we've got it on film.
Yeah, and also they're standing right next to molten metal, so only that specific area is hot, nothing else. Precisely,
dude. Yeah, because there were reports that the rubble pile, but we're going to get to the ongoing simmering heat of the rubble pile later. But once again, people were saying it was 1,100 degrees on the rubble pile, but we saw people walking around on the rubble pile on the day. Here are all of these guys around the so-called molten metal. They don't seem very hot. They're not burning their hands because it's a white light. They just change the coloring. And at the bottom you can see there they start moving the light. So it's molten metal. And just to give you an idea, if there was molten metal and everything around there, let's go to a foundry that works with molten metal, and let's see what happens when that molten metal gets into contact with water.
Slag or metal waste is the waste material after ore purification that will not be used in the metal processing. Though there has been a progress in recycling this waste material in the last years, a significant portion of it is still stored as dump in special containers placed in big holes on the ground. At least 24 hours are needed for slag to become solid and be disposed of. We must point out that after that time, waste is still red hot. A problem from this action could be when due to several factors. When metal impurities mix with water, for instance, a big explosion can occur. In addition, just a little amount of liquid is enough to start deflagration. Slag also brings other hazards to workers. They are less visible though. In some occasions, they emit toxic gases that could be lethal if workers do not have the proper protection. Slag or metal waste.
Okay, so a quick second one with regards to the molten metal, because we did have water mains burst and all of that, so let's quickly jump into that and have a listen.
Wood. Why is it that they say Judy Wood's theory, hypothesis, and they never say evidence? Why is that?
To instill doubt. It's a way of being able to undermine the credibility of evidence. It's a way of denying evidence, marginalizing evidence. And for example, there were firefighters waiting in knee-deep water right after the event. On 9/11, there was a water main that was broken, and they're wading through it. Yet folks say that it was real hot, molten metal. Did they use their waders to go through the molten metal? It doesn't make sense. They don't stop to think. And if it was molten metal, where's the resolidified big nuggets of re-solidified metal?
And I have a sample of this molten metal, previously molten metal here,
just a tiny sample. This is really all we need.
I'm not saying there was no liquid metal, but it was not hot because, you know, you'd had steam explosions. You have to look at the evidence. I think we all can remember the paper that was blown all over the place. Why wasn't the paper on fire if it was so hot? And the biggest thing is the 14 survivors in Stairway B, they walked out of there on their own steam. I mean, their own way of getting out of there. They didn't complain about having been cooked to death, you know, come back from the dead having been cooked. No, they were alive.
But then the strangest thing happened. This beam of sunlight came right in on us, like about 8 inches long, but it was clearly sunlight. It was all dirty and full of debris, and it looked like pepper was floating around in it, sort of. But it was sunlight, and I'm like amazed now. It's a 110-story building above us, and I'm looking up at the sun.
And it's another thing. Oh, all went into the basement. Well, they haven't established that. They're just putting that out there as a theory, but that theory is easily omitted, saying, well, did the building fall down and make a detour around those 14 people to get to the basement? How could it fall into the basement and go around those people in Stairway B? So there's a lot of, if you look at the facts, it omits this other, but then that takes away these people's security blanket. If they can't handle what happened, they want to believe that all the material was there, it was just stuffed into the basement, even though there wasn't enough room in the basement to fit the buildings.
You know, I remember during college, I took criminal law, and I remember that there was an order of crime solving, and you know, they discussed forensic science, which is the application of scientific knowledge and a methodology to legal problems and criminal investigations. Isn't this the same way you must treat this crime scene in 9/11?
Very much. It must begin with what happened.
You were wanting to say something, Matthew.
Yes. There's some comments about that supposed molten metal. If you can play that video again, or the images, I think
Which
you meant
one?
that it was the original photo was just a light source, right? It was just like a lamp or something, and then the one that was darkened was the one being pushed.
These two.
Yeah, these two. I think that's just a light, right? And then.
Yeah, this one on the left is actually what happened, and this is the picture that Stephen E. Jones was sharing and pushing.
Yeah, so this one just looks just like a light or a lamp or whatever they're using.
So you want me to play that video again?
Yeah, just play the video again, and then just so because people in the comments were wondering, and they were wondering about the molten metal. The one on the right is the one being pushed by disinfo agents. Yeah, and then this is what actually happened. So then this is just a light. Yeah.
Okay, so let's play the video again.
I think it was just a light. But there was some glowing metal, but I think that one in particular was just a rescue operation. Yeah, it looks like just a light. Yeah, they just have lights.
You can physically see them move the light over here.
Yeah.
You see over there?
Yeah, it looks like a lamp.
That's the lamp.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the people in the comments were just asking about it. All right, so that's perfect.
Okay, so let's move over to this quick video with regards to that. Let's move up.
There is a very
to the 2-minute mark. Oh man. Oh, it's 2 minutes. Now let's listen to this.
There is a very definite connection between what happened on 9/11 and what happened with John Hutchison's in John Hutchison's experiments. And again, it's to do with this underlying energy some type of 0-point energy, some type of energy which is fundamental to the structure of matter.
Known as the Hutchinson effect.
That was one that is really highly controversial.
You know, we do know that people in the military are well aware of what you've been doing. You know, it's not as if you have been, working away totally as like a hermit. They're fully aware of what you've been doing.
The U.S. military took an interest.
Well, we did for a while.
Colonel John Alexander was 1983. He came with a team from Los Alamos.
And I had 4 guys from INSCOM, including myself, and 2 from Los Alamos.
So I gave a demonstration for about 4 months working with the team.
To recreate the situation, which they did with John Hutchison. They wrote a scathing report and actually suggested that Tom Bearden, local U.S. guy, had slipped into the country somehow and manipulated it. Had absolutely nothing to do with it. But that was enough to kill, as I couldn't get further funding on it.
So John Alexander was a little upset over that, and he brought in another team from McDonnell Douglas to do a clear, not classified report.
But here's one where Jack Houck and McDonnell Douglas came along and supported it.
Then after that, of course, the Canadian government did their experiments and kept it a matter of national security.
The implications of this technology are so amazing, it could help every single person on this planet. But instead, it's been weaponized and classified.
And then just a quick coup de grace with regards to the molten metal. Let's listen to this quickly.
We have the videotapes, the firefighters reporting molten metal like a slurry or a steel mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Well, we do have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal? Was it heat?
That's a very good question. It's also one of the first times I've heard Alex Jones speechless.
But if you go through the photographs of people taking the towers apart, doing the cleanup, I know Richard's got the big book, I can't remember his name, the big coffee table book with 1,000 pictures, 500 pictures.
Okay, so this is Wayne Costa. He was presenting his paper that he wrote with regards to propel demolition, and he was trying to argue that the insides of the building was painted with some sort of nano-thermite that caused the outer shell of the building to like just go pfft. But he had no answer with regards to the Spire picture that I showed earlier of the South Tower. I had something like 6 questions, and they only asked, I think, 3. Gene Larotonda was the guy running the Zoom call, so he didn't want to ask my questions, and he also then jumped in to try and save Wayne Costa with regards to the Spire. I've got various edits with regards to that. I've got the full answer and question section, and then I've got it broken down to shorter videos that you can find on my Odyssey channel. But here he's basically putting his foot in his mouth with regards to the fact that, one, there was no molten metal found, so it didn't fall on the survivors, and you've got Richard Gage, who was also in the Zoom call, that didn't correct him with regards to the fact that there is so-called molten metal. So they basically debunked themselves in the Zoom call, and I think it was around about March 2023. So let's listen to the rest of them debunking themselves.
But at any rate, Richard, thanks for showing that.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Okay.
During the cleanup, nobody reported seeing melted steel in these core columns. So we don't know when and where they were actually destroyed. And, you know, just like we don't know where the flight data recorders went to that they were reported.
Another thing that you always pick up with regards to interacting with these guys is as soon as they get to a point where they pushed into a corner, they always jump back to the planes. They always bring the planes into the narrative. It doesn't matter whatever, planes or no planes, just forget about that whole argument, because if there were planes and if there weren't planes, what happened to those buildings couldn't have been caused by planes. End of story. That's been proven. It's just a distraction to get people arguing over various points. So yeah, let's just keep going.
You know, maybe some things disappeared, and if so, we'll never know where those steel pieces might have been.
So he's stating things just disappeared. Okay, and we'll never know what happened to it. Read Dr. Wood's book.
And what could have brought the core down.
There goes the second tower. Unfucking believable. There goes the second tower. Unfucking believable.
There's a whole lot of evidence and very weird things that happen at the World Trade Center. Okay, there are about 10,000 file cabinets that are missing. There's about 20,000 floor trusses and 220 acres of metal decking that's missing. The question is, where did it go?
Seconds, the fiery
Okay, so that pretty much covers the so-called molten metal that they go on about. So let's get to his next point. Active unignited nano-thermite. Discovery of nano-thermite in the dust supports the explosive incendiary hypothesis not explained by Dew. So Gene, please go read chapter 7, pages 122 to 130. I also wrote 2 articles with regards to the demolition. Oops, what did I do now? The controlled demolition of thermite and the nuke theories. That's again referencing Elsa's articles, some of the points over here. Steve Obi, the survivors, and so more. And then if you go to my second article with regards to that, where we expand on the controlled demolition of the thermite theory, we've got the so-called cut cores, and then there's a whole hour section in the observable evidence theory that basically goes through the whole aspect of why it couldn't be thermite. And I think so far, if everybody's been following, they should have been able to figure that out as well. So let's go to the active unignited thermite. we already went through this little video where
Iron
Andrew
oxide
Johnson
and aluminium
was
powder. You can't just
mentioning
start it with a match to the World Trade
what it
Center
is.
of the World Thermite workings of the building.
So people can just
but that's-
rewind to
yeah,
that
we know that
section. But love him or hate him, I still don't really have a feel on this dude, because he's a little bit way out there. He did have Andrew Johnson on during September 11th, 2023. They were planning to have a 15-minute conversation, which ended up becoming a half an hour conversation. You cannot upload their conversation onto YouTube because it gets flagged for hate speech. So I basically just hope that this short little 5-minute section won't be an issue, because Andrew Johnson just also goes into his history with the Scholars for 9/11 and the fact that he was editing videos for Stephen E. Jones initially, and then he left because he figured out that, sorry, these guys are being disingenuous.
Face of the planet, or is there any heat at all, you're the physics guy, that can make steel just turn to dust?
No, not to my knowledge. There is no method in the white world that is known that can turn this to dust, and therefore because of that situation, people will deny that this can have happened, and they'll dismiss these events, dismiss this research, say it's impossible, I'm not going to look at it. And on the next slide, number 3, I don't want to keep this up for more than a few seconds, but it initially was my entry into this. I said I did part of my degree in physics, and on the screen there, a few people might recognize this as one of the equations of motion, and you can calculate from the height of the towers how long it would have taken to drop an object from the top down to the bottom, and it was about 9.16 seconds or thereabouts, and that was the time in which they disappeared. And as Eric Hushmid once said, it's impossible for the building to fall through itself at the same speed as it falls through thin air. And the only way that those speeds can match is if the buildings essentially offered no resistance during the destruction. And that's what Dr. Judy Wood demonstrated in her research. Now, I found this out. If you look at slides, I'll just click through slide 5 and slide 6. Go on to slide 6. I joined the Scholars for 9/11 Truth group, and this fellow in that group called Stephen E. Jones, he did a presentation in 2006, and I watched that presentation. I made a video of it for him, and he sent me his PowerPoint, and you can see he used a particular photograph which shows this steel turning to dust, which we just talked about, and that's the one on the right. And I saved that directly from his PowerPoint presentation. But I found the original photograph, I think, via Dr. Judy Wood, and that's on the left there. And you can see how this photograph has been subtly changed. And Dr. Jones was pointing out these little white dots that you can see in the right-hand image. And he said, oh, you can see this thermite reacting. And thermite is an incendiary. It's not even an explosive. He was claiming that this was the main destructive mechanism of the building.
Yeah, I've heard this thermite theory from this guy called Richard Gage.
Correct.
And the question that I have about that, and maybe we'll talk to him in the upcoming days, but thermite is a very bright, like it has this light that emanates.
That's right.
And it's blinding, a very small amount of it. Enough thermite to take down buildings of that size, 110-story structures like that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would look like a quarter of the sun was burning in New York City.
Go to the next slide, number 7, and you'll get a kind of feel for that. And this, again, you're exactly right.
Yeah, so let's stop it there, just to make sure that we don't get flagged. So, question, did anyone see this happening on 9/11? I sure as hell didn't. And then we can talk about this. Thermite. Thermite is a heavily promoted variation of the official collapse theory in which thermite, rather than fires, made the towers collapse. This variation of the collapse theory was supplied to the public in about 2005, at a time when skepticism of the official narrative was growing rapidly and solidifying in the 9/11 truther movement. Despite claims of hard evidence that the thermite destroyed the Twin Towers, nobody has ever taken any evidence to court, and nobody has ever explained why so many of the effects observed at the World Trade Center are the exact opposite of the effects produced by thermite. And just for a lighter note with regards to thermite, whenever somebody mentions thermite, I hope the following song will play in the back of your mind.
Blinded by the light, wrapped up like a noose, another runner in the night. Blinded by the light.
Alright, yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, like I was saying, yeah, the music.
We've got to make sure for.
Yeah, 10 seconds is good because the last one I uploaded a minute of it, and then I got a copyright.
No, I think
and I
if
had to
we
mute.
keep
I had
it
to
under
mute
30
1 minute.
seconds, I think we will be fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. 10 seconds is perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Okay. Cool. Bananas. Let's see. So we're on the next point. And this is the persistent extreme heat. High temperatures at ground zero contradict you, proponents' denial of such temperatures. Now, if you read chapter 13, pages 257 to 296, it'll explain to you exactly why the rubble pile wasn't hot. We've already gone through a couple of points with regards to that, and we've seen that that was a complete and utter cover story. So the lack of high heat. The evidence of lack of high heat rules out jet fuel, infernos, thermite, and nukes, which are some of the most heavily promoted cover stories for 9/11. This explains why there is such a concerted effort to steer truthers away from Dr. Wood's book and promote the myth of high heat during and after the destruction. The myth of an inferno in the rubble is also used to explain away the ongoing fuming at ground zero, which lasted for weeks. The Hutchinson effect also produces cold fuming of materials. We'll get into that later. Humans and machines cannot survive on top of a 16-acre inferno. Once you realize there was no high heat generated, the use of some type of dew becomes self-evident. And once again, we've got the oxy-fuel hoses. If those were draped over a towering inferno, those things will just explode, and it won't be a very nice experience for the guys actually on the rubble pile. And the same goes for the earth-moving equipment. If this was a towering inferno, the oil in the hydraulics would just cook, and they will seize. There was no reports of any broken down earth-moving equipment or anything like that. This is already in October 2001, where you still have the fuming going on, and you've got people walking around. Something to pay attention to is the amount of dirt everywhere. Why is there so much dirt everywhere? So they throwing in dirt, they're trying to water it down or whatever. What the hell is going on here? Because obviously you can see it's not warm because people are walking around on the rubble pile. Again, you've got soil everywhere. You've got the cadaver dogs walking around and all the people walking around, and they're fine. And you've got and people seem to go to the NASA thermal imaging pictures and all of that kind of aspects. On the 16th, you had them pick this up. By the 23rd, it pretty much seemed to have cooled down. Now, this is an assumption of heat. It doesn't mean it's heat. And there are people who propose that it was longitudinal scalar waves causing the radiation sickness, cancers, and death. But sorry, there was no radiation whatsoever. This is from Veterans Today. This is a screenshot from another guy who was pushing the whole nuke thing. And Tom E. Bearden did a lot of work on RF weaponry and all of that. There's a 1985 CNN investigative report with regards to that. That's under my due playlist. And so we think that this is what they were picking up, longitudinal scalar waves and not actual heat. That was just another way of downplaying the ongoing fuming for 100 days. And Dr. Wood has also mentioned that if according to the NASA imagery, you had certain of these areas being at certain temperatures. Location E is around about over here, and they said it was 890 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet you've got pictures of firemen wading in the water. There's no steam coming out, and the guys aren't being cooked alive. And the same with the thermal imaging on September 23. That's when it cooled down. But on the 18th of September, you had guys climbing into holes under the the tower number 2, and there's no molten metal. There is water over there, and the guys aren't getting cooked whatsoever. So let's just go into a video quickly here from where that is being discussed.
What do I mean by toasted cars?
Let's take it there to 3 minutes 15 seconds, and we can go through.
Toast. Comes out, he can't see anything, and then he says, "Thank you." It came out. This was right about the time that one of the towers turned to dust. Actually, some of them said that initially water had no effect on the car fires. Hot steel-toed boots melting? Does that make sense?
Steel-toed boots.
Steel-toed boots. Out, still on the rubble. It's still, I believe, 1,100 degrees.
Does it make sense that these guys are walking around on a grill that's 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit?
The guy's boots just melt within a few hours, and they're burning their feet.
There were no reports of burned feet.
1,100 degrees, and the boots melt in hours. I've not yet seen any pictures of heaps and heaps of shoes that these firemen had to replace. So once again, what are they trying to hide over here?
But at a minimum, if my steel oven is melting, the turkey inside is more than well done. Something weird is going on with boots. Boots are coming apart. They're disintegrating. Why? A lot of people have seen this image saying, it's proof of heat. So this point E, they say it's 819 Fahrenheit. There's a lake there. A water main broke, filled the street with water. And this guy's even walking around in knee-deep water. He doesn't look like a boiled chicken. Water boils at 212 Fahrenheit. So that's not hot. This might be something else, some other interesting energy signal.
We have the videotapes. The firefighters reporting molten metal like a slurry or a steel mill or a volcano. Those are quotes. Giant pools.
What about the pictures of them dragging oxygen hoses all over the steaming supposed hot metal? If it were that hot, you wouldn't dare do that, would you?
Well, we do have the infrared photos of the molten metal.
Well, again, what melted the metal?
What do I mean by toasted cars?
Okay, so you guys saw that I mentioned the dirt everywhere. So let's investigate that aspect of the rubble pile.
Almost immediately in the days following September 11th, there were these dump trucks that were hauling these loads of fresh dirt in and dumping them on the fuming rubble pile.
Documented in Dr. Judy Wood's book and on the website is the activity of various trucks that were actually bringing in dirt to the site. And repeatedly, this was spread around within the World Trade Center site, moved around with earth-moving machines, and then it was taken out again, as if there was something in the ground that was being soaked up by the dirt and then taken away. So it's like they knew that this energy was, to use the term that we came across in research, in John Hutchison's research, the energy was non-self-quenching. It didn't quench, it kept on going.
dirt is not used to cover smoke from a fire. Maybe a toxic spill or something like that, but conventional smoke does not continue emerging from saturated dirt for months. So we can say that something is definitely strange here. Why were the remains of this fire truck sprinkled with what looks like moist potting soil? Clearly it didn't suffer from an out-of-control fire in these places. This is a photo from September 13th, and we can see dirt all over the place.
Okay, so with regards to that, also one of the other aspects that the guys were pushing with regards to the ongoing fuming and everything was the basements. And whoops. So I just quickly want to see where I put that aspect with regards to that. Just give me 2 seconds. I lost my place over here.
Yeah, no worries. Also, I just wanted to chime in. So Reality Access is in the chat. So it says, hello, Matthew.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it says, hello, Matthew and 9/11 Revisionist. You're doing tremendous work. Heat transference in the limited time of exposure into the increasingly larger column mass obviously rules out thermite ignition. Yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah, so I've got another article that I wrote with regards to the basements that people can go through, because they basically stated that's where all the heat and everything came from. But another aspect with regards to that's very, very important is the seismic readings that the guys don't really want to talk about. And NIST mentioned the fact that there was no significant damage done. So I just quickly want to read this little segment from it. The National Construction Safety Team Advisory Committee met via teleconference on Thursday, December 14, 2006, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. to discuss the progress on investigating the collapse of World Trade Center 7. They invited the public to watch the live webcast of their meeting. They also allowed the public to call in with questions, an invitation that required prior arrangements since the schedule allowed only for 6 calls of 5 minutes each. Fortunately, Jerry Leipard, Dr. Judy Wood's lawyer, learned about this meeting early enough to get on the schedule. As it happened, there were only 2 callers, and he was one of them. During the teleconference, the NSTT Advisory Committee discussed possible causes of the fires in World Trade Center 7. The committee was also asked if the collapse of the towers could have ruptured a pipeline that carried fuel through the World Trade Center complex over to Building 7. Dr. Shaiman Sundar made the following statement about the World Trade Center 1 and World Trade Center 2 seismic signals. The signal strength due to the collapse of the towers were not of any magnitude that was seismically significant from an earthquake design standpoint, or from the design of a failure of a structural component, or if I would say a piping system that might be used in a structure. So there wasn't anything that gave us pause in terms of that being a significant seismic event to have ruptured the pipeline. So there you have it. You've got a pipeline with fuel going from World Trade Center 7 into the towers. If the rubble, if you had 2 500,000-ton buildings slamming down onto Liberty Plaza, that would have broken through into the basements, and that would have ruptured the pipeline. And if you read the article, you'll basically see that, yes, there was some damage to the basements, but not significant. So the whole story of, oh, the basements were full of rubble is complete and utter bull, because they weren't. And just go read this article, and then let me just quickly go back to this little section so that we can hear that what was going on in the basements.
We have a grace period here. We've got 2 weeks just to get into as many of these cracks and crevices and get down deep to find them. Going in, if you had to stop and sit down and think, you might worry that, man, this thing could come down any minute. So you just kept your mind active. You know, oh, look here, let's search here, let me see, should we move this, should we go that way? Because it might be easy to just say, holy, let's get out of here. You know? So you had to keep your mind focused.
During the first 50 feet of their descent, the rescue teams were confronted by a mass of twisted beams and crushed ceilings. Then they began to find signs of what had been there before. Further down, they discovered staircases that were almost intact, which aided their descent into the underworld.
Another van!
The deeper they went, the more preserved everything was. 100 feet down, they found an eerie world of underground shopping malls and car parks that in places were virtually untouched.
When you'd enter into a location, it looked as it did on September 10th. Some of the parking areas, the cars were in pristine condition. A lot of the cars were driven out of the place.
So a lot of the cars were driven out of the place. So that whole other story that people want to say, okay, fine, a lack of rubble is due to the basements being filled with rubble. Sorry, debunked. And this is a quick one and just to show you how close the bathtub was, we'll get to that in another video. That was right next to the towers. If this bathtub was ruptured, it'll basically cause the whole of Manhattan to flood and the whole area of the World Trade Center. And this is a video that we saw on the internet, and MES gave us a little bit of a schooling on how wrong this video was with regards to the basement substructure.
Twin towers are said to withstand earthquake and hurricane wind power. The World Trade Center is located in the financial district of Lower Manhattan, New York City. This is the view of the World Trade Center complex today. This is where the old-time and famous Twin Towers were located. The Twin Towers were the world's tallest building from 1971 to 1973. The height of the North Tower was 1,368 feet and South Tower was 1,362 feet. The One World Trade Center building today is the same height as the North Tower without the spire. Twin Towers each had 110 floors. Let's go back to before 9/11 attack. The whole World Trade Center complex looked very different compared to today's. This was Building 7, Building 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, also known as Twin Towers. Under the ground, there was a layer of slurry wall around this complex.
MES note, the 70 feet to bedrock should be shown much shorter than the 208 feet wide Twin Towers.
It was used to prevent water from the Hudson River going through the soil and flood the construction site. There were 6 levels of floors under the ground. The foundation of the Twin Towers went 70 foot deep down to the bedrock. This is the core of the building, running from the bedrock to the top of the building.
MES note again, the underground depth is not to scale. Each Twin Tower was 208 feet wide. The depth from ground level to the bedrock was 70 feet deep. The below ground floors of the 3D model should be much more shallow, as in the shown construction images.
The core contains 47 steel columns. Let's take a look inside the core. It had restroom, utility rooms, a lot of elevators, but only 3 emergency stairwells. This is the exterior steel column of the buildings. This is a floor system. It was made of lightweight steel and concrete. All of these parts held the building together in place. The Twin Towers are said to withstand earthquake and hurricane wind power.
Okay, so that's the one article. I did a follow-up article with regards to that as well. We're not going to go into in depth, but this is this was recorded in January of 2001, where the guys go on with regards to what was found or what used to be in the basements.
There's a whole building that exists. Floors each had 110
They
floors.
show you
more than 12 million square feet of it.
But yeah, just go read it, because it's becoming very, very long. And you had the fuming going on until they said that the so-called fires were put out on the 19th of December 2001, but you had CBS and 60 Minutes going in October. You had CNN in December 12, apparently, whilst the fires were still going on, but they didn't record any of the fires. So please go read through this article, watch the video. It's a long one, but it'll give you an idea of what was in the basements, and none of the so-called huge systems that they had in there was ever found. Then I just quickly want to check this. Another aspect that hardly ever gets mentioned with regards to 9/11 is Hurricane Erin, and I need to put this in here so that people can just take note of it, because it's very important.
One funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11.
You missed that one. This was on 9/11.
One funny.
So, the thing with hurricanes, everybody always goes on a huge tangent, scaring people. Oh, hurricane's coming, we've got to evacuate, and all of this weird and wonderful stuff. Hurricane Erin, and I'll show you the trajectory of Hurricane Erin. But it's not like anybody didn't know about it, but they didn't mention it on the news. So you had 10 universities, 5 NASA centers, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration tracking this hurricane. And in 2005, they mentioned Hurricane Erin raced across the North Atlantic and along the eastern seaboard in September 2001. She was used as an experiment for a study to improve hurricane tracking and intensity predictions, allowing meteorologists to provide more accurate and timely warnings to the public. Yet, for 4 days, whilst this hurricane was heading towards New York City, it was hardly mentioned. Studies show that temperatures measured at an extremely high altitude collected from hurricane center or eye can provide improved understanding of how hurricanes change intensity. Now, this is the trajectory, 9th, 10th, and September 11th. That's 8 a.m. on 9/11, and then it just did an abrupt change on the 12th, 13th, and then just disappeared. This is from the Irrefutable series. And what did we find? There was constant wind speed, constant air pressure, and that was for a 24-hour period on the day of 9/11. We also had Commander Culbertson. He was in space on the International Space Station. 13 years later, he's recounting what he saw from orbit. He said, I'm looking up and down the East Coast to see if there's anything else. That was a live feed on the day where he was talking about how he's looking down at 9/11 and the World Trade Center, and he was only showing that little section, but he did not see this. So that's got to raise questions, because if you look at what the Hurricane Erin was doing, it seemed to be controlled. And again, if you go and read my article on Hurricane Erin, and then the background with regards to weather modification and all that, the first hurricane that the guy steered or had an effect on was in 1947. And then in 2023, we had Hurricane Hillary that also made some weird maneuvers. And nobody really knows what happened on September 10, because there was a huge storm. It was an electrical storm. You had this weird and wonderful clouds, and you've got all the proof there that there was a massive storm happening. So also please go read that article. And out of the whole aspect, you can see this is the gentleman that actually was
the composition of
doing the seeding in 1947 and numerous other cloud seeding stuff. And he tells you why it's so important for them to either steer them or break them up or intensify them, and what the benefits are for the government.
Hurricane may have dozens of energy cells in it, and they're like the pistons in an engine. They just chug, chug, chug. They get stronger and stronger and stronger because they feed off the warm air below them. And they eventually turn into this thing they call a hurricane with all of these energy cells in it. We know where those energy cells are. We know what makes them tick. We have the materials, if you will, to alter those energy cells and decrease the maximum surface winds in a hurricane. On August 18th in 1969, Hurricane Debbie was seeded 5 times at 2-hour intervals, and the maximum wind speeds decreased from 115 to 80 miles per hour. That's a pretty remarkable reduction of more than 45% in damage reduction potential. The storm was left alone on the 19th, and on the 20th went back and seeded that cloud the second time and decreased the winds again to just under 100 miles per hour, or about 24% more damage reduction potential. There is so much damage done that the construction industry in general all over the United States benefits because the cost of material goes up. So the insurance company may or may not gain from having these damage reductions take place. As far as the energy industry is concerned, we all know that they get their money back almost immediately by increasing the price of their product. And it's not unheard of to believe that the actions performed by FEMA or the government is not a surefire way to buy votes. So there may not be any political or economic motivation on the government or some major industry's part to reduce the damage of hurricanes. The composition of a hurricane.
Okay, so we're nearly done. There's 2 more points to go through, and then I'll go into my summary points. The following point that was mentioned with regards to trying to dispute due, he was mentioning craters observed in World Trade Center 5 and 6. Holes in World Trade Center 5 and 6 are attributed to falling steel, not exotic weaponry, as suggested by the due proponents. Now, if you read chapter 10, pages 197 to 212, it basically covers what happened to the other buildings, and something strange with regards to holes, if you want to basically reference that, is on the morning of September 11th, you had these strange holes appear in the street. It's akin to what you see with regards to the Hutchinson effect on some of these metal samples, and this is just to confirm with you with regards to the report that was given on the morning from the helicopter.
Yeah, talk about a rough ride this morning. Let's go down to 1 and 9 and show you what we mean. Check out this huge hole in the road. A partial road collapse happened here sometime overnight. As a result, 1 and 9 northbound completely shut down right here at 86th Street. And as you can see, only 1 lane southbound getting by. This is a road that people use to get to the Lincoln Tunnel. You're going to want to find some local roads to get around this mess. Workers are on the scene trying to fill in the hole or perhaps just find out why this happened. We pulled up on the scene maybe 20 minutes ago, and there's no telling how long it's going to get this fixed this morning. I'm April Lamonica reporting live at Chopper 4. Back to you in the studio.
Okay, so let's touch on his questions with regards to the craters in Building 5 and 6.
So let's look at those holes. If you look at the scale using these wheat checks here, because we know about what the spacing is on them, you can figure out these are about 24-foot diameter holes, or cylindrical cutouts. Many of them the same diameter. Look how far down the middle of that hole is. It's empty down to the ground level. 8 stories of building, gone. This is a look from inside that hole. You count down from the top, you can count down 8 stories. So you know you're at ground level. Then we have Building 5 that was over in the northeast corner. Nice round cylindrical holes. This one turns out is the roof flap hanging over it, but it's still the cylindrical cutout. This one looks like a larger diameter. But what caused those round holes? We have this cylindrical cutout in the middle of Liberty Street. You notice this outer wall is sort of leaning back, and it's got a cutout missing that lines up with that hole. Kind of interesting. We look down into that hole. It's just what caused the hole. It's open. We also notice these different sub-levels have the reinforced concrete bars sticking out of it. And this piece of I-beam is pretty fascinating. It looks like it just withered away to nothing. It's eroded to nothing. Thinned out. And there's another hole up here. When you start looking at this, you start noticing lots of little holes. And they coalesce into bigger holes. So if we look at all of these grouped together, lift off a few of the wheat checks that are laying over the top of them, we can look down into that hole. And climb down into it. We're climbing down into the basement of the second tower, and to me it looks that these folks are walking through a puddle of water. We may have heard of rumors of molten metal, but I see no indication of it here. And this picture was taken a week after 9/11.
And then what the guys never ever talk about is World Trade Center 3 and World Trade Center 4. And there are massive anomalies. We've seen a little bit of World Trade Center 3 so far. So let's just pop on through to these two quickly.
This is World Trade Center 3, aka the Marriott Hotel. Right after Tower 2 was destroyed, this big gouge was missing out of the building. A huge vertical slice separating the northern edge of it. This was before Tower 1 was destroyed. And after Tower 1 was destroyed, the rest of World Trade Center 3 went away. And then we had these 3 racks of steel beams left sticking out of the ground. And the only thing left was the base of WTC-3. This little tiny stub here in the left-hand corner. This image is looking northeast across from where Tower 1 used to be just a couple hours earlier. Giant 210-story buildings. From this all the way down to this.
very large.
The towers and the north wing of the
material that appears to be a major transmutation.
In this image, Building 4 is missing the main body. The only thing left is the north wing of the building. The towers and the body of Building 4 are completely missing. Where did the rest of these buildings go?
If we go down below the ground in that corner, well, here's what it looked like. The building indeed, the main body went missing, just like it was sliced off there. So the mall is in the first story below ground. And there's some firefighters that were walking along there. We're going to go down one story and look at them. Here they are. That's right under that area. It's a little bit punched in down here, but you can read innovation luggage, Hallmark cards, so you know right where they are. So now we're going to go a couple of stories below that to the loading docks. And it's painted purple under Building 5, so you know where you are, and then green under Building 4. So it's color-coded so the delivery trucks know where to unload. And we're going to look down that direction, just after 9/11. Listen to the echo in this audio clip.
Going down to the parking garage. We're in quite deep.
These are the first pictures of search crews underneath the World Trade Center, desperately looking for survivors.
That's not a collapsed parking garage. That's not even a full parking garage. It's an empty parking garage.
So just to emphasize the whole fact with regards to the basements, this is 60 minutes.
Tens of thousands of people used to come to these underground tunnels every day, not just to work in the towers and park their cars, but also to visit a vast underground shopping mall.
Thousands of people came here to shop every day. Sure. It was a city underneath the city.
A very, very vibrant place. Very vibrant place.
Shops were down here. In
Shops,
addition to the
restaurants, 15 to 25,000 people per building between people who actually work there. You have the, the 1 and the 9 train going through the middle of the complex. You've got the PATH trains. I mean, this was a mini city.
Below ground.
All below ground.
We still had 3 stories to go to get down to the rail tunnels. It was pitch black, disorienting, and it was slippery. The floor was slick with oil and gas from the abandoned cars, and we were warned the floor could collapse at any minute.
You see these cracks right here?
Yep.
Right along here, this is a cracked slab. You can see it goes all the way.
Yeah.
In a normal world, this is not a place I would recommend taking anyone to walk.
Well, that's the reason we want to keep moving here,
exactly.
because this is unstable.
The PATH commuter rail line is 6 stories below ground zero. Miraculously, perhaps, no one died in this station the day the towers came down.
They use standard operating procedure for the Port Authority, and the TA is when there's a fire to evacuate. So all these, both the PATH trains and the subways were evacuated when the buildings were on fire. So when they did collapse, no one was injured. I mean, we lost a lot of people, but we saved a lot more than we lost.
35,000 commuters used to arrive in this station from New Jersey every day. But everything stopped just 5 minutes after Tower 1 tumbled down 6 stories overhead.
Of all the things we've seen some incredible things today. Seeing this empty train.
It's pretty eerie. It's pretty eerie. And the sign that says next stop home, I mean, that's really kind of poignant.
Fortunately, there was nobody in the train.
Absolutely.
And this got evacuated.
This was all evacuated. No one was hurt down here.
But it may take 2 years before the trains will start rolling here again, and even longer before a nearby subway line will be fixed. Tens of thousands.
Okay, so the other aspect with regards to the basements, and I don't know why people still believe the fact that the basements were full of rubble, because they even wrote articles with regards to it saying the engineers find much of the 7-story basements intact. And the other aspect with regards to the basement is obviously the slurry wall that's so important. And in that same 60 minutes documentary in October, when the fires were supposedly still raging underneath and the pile was still so hot, you don't see any smoke in the basements whatsoever when they're there. And this is what they had to say with regards to the slurry wall. And it's very, very important that people realize that, because if two 500,000-ton buildings drop down onto that slurry wall, the whole of Manhattan would have been flooded.
The World Trade Center complex was built 30 years ago. An enormous retaining wall, called a slurry wall, was constructed below ground. The wall is 3 feet wide and 60 to 70 feet deep. It was designed to prevent water from the Hudson River, just blocks away, from flooding the 6-story basements.
Here is your slurry wall. This is probably an old tieback.
The other side of this is the Hudson River?
Well, the other side of this is mud, but the water table here is extremely high because we're so close to the river that special construction techniques were needed.
The massive underground containing structure is nicknamed the bathtub.
That's the difference. The bathtub in your house is designed to keep the water in.
This keeps it out so that they could build the parking structures underground here.
For 30 years now, the wall has been supported by the floors in the basement levels, floors that have now buckled. Because of all the damage, Ken Holden's engineers will have to shore up the wall with more than 1,000 cables to prevent it from collapsing.
You know, we're drilling through the 3-foot wall, drill 85 feet or so down to bedrock, then we drill 35 feet into bedrock, then we take basically the same kind of cables that they use on bridges, grout it up, basically concrete it up, wait 3 days for it to cure, and then they tension those cables, and that sustained the wall.
Something fell?
Something fell. Once the permanent...
Are we all right here?
We're fine.
Okay.
Commissioner Holden knows he can never let his guard down here, and he has concerns about the structural integrity of the wall when he starts demolition nearby.
As we talk right now, parts of the slurry wall have been damaged a little. Is there some water seeping through, or not much?
There is no more water seeping through the slurry wall now than there is in normal circumstances.
But it's a constant battle to keep it dry down here, to keep the floods out. Even when the wall is intact, there are several inches of water in these tunnels.
But this water is not seeping in from the river. This comes from firemen's water.
Exactly.
Saving the wall is critical. If the tunnels flood, the water could pour into train and subway lines and destabilize nearby buildings.
I don't know about you, but is the hair on the back of your neck beginning to graze a little bit?
I've been down there too many times. My hairs are kind of worn away.
Well, maybe you forgive some of the rest of us.
Ken Holden is under enormous pressure to get the job done, below ground and above. But he knows he can't lose his sensitivity or perspective. World Trade Center complex was built 30...
Okay, so everybody remembers the whole aspect with regards to the whole pull-it aspect with Building 7 and Larry Silverstein and all that aspects. But nobody really realizes the actual pull-it when it comes to the World Trade Center 7, World Trade Center, and it's basically Building 6, because they had to pull Building 6. And don't take my word for it. Listen to the guys who were actually tasked with pulling Building 6.
Oh, we're getting ready to pull Building 6.
We had to be very careful how we demolished Building 6. We were worried about the Building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain area.
Well, we've got the cables attached in 4 different locations going up, and they'll be pulling the building to the north. It's not every day you try to pull down an 8-story building with cables.
So, just to re-emphasize, you had 210-story buildings, 500,000 tons each, that supposedly had to slam down onto the ground, which didn't, and they were worried about demolishing an 8-story building. So yes, that just once again proves there wasn't any large pieces of steel that actually ever hit the ground. And to just give you another idea with regards to building 7, where they said that one column caused the whole building to fall, this is building 3. So that's just after the first tower went down, World Trade Center 2, and you can see several columns are gone, but the building is still standing. So that whole aspect with regards to building 7 just doesn't hold any water. Pardon the pun with regards to the bathtub. And that's what was left of building 3. Building 3 again. There's the little stub of building 3. You've got all the rubble over here. But once again, if you look at this size of the building in relation to what was left of building 3, you don't have all the steel that got ejected laterally for 600 feet. And this is a screenshot from a FEMA video. That's the Bankers Trust building. This is building 4, and there you can see it's sliced off, and you still have the fuming going on. This is a top view. That's all that was left of building 4. Again, just showing how it was sheared off. There is a different view. That section over there is the inner core section of the South Tower. That's building 5. Now this is building 6. That's completely empty on the inside, and you've got all the holes. No debris on this building whatsoever, and hardly any debris on that section that was left of World Trade Center 6. Again, just another picture showing the eight stories, and very strange twisted metal inside the building, and especially that one over there as well. And just to give you a size comparison, just look at the size of these buildings next to World Trade Center 6, and once again, you can't see any rubble there. And we are nearly in the home stretch. Matthew, I think your legs are most probably starting to wobble now.
No,
so I do.
I'm actually sitting down now. Yeah, I'm actually sitting down now. Oh, you actually?
For a change, I told you to get a chair.
Well, no, because I have soccer tomorrow, and I don't want to get too tired. So I started sitting like 40 minutes ago. But yeah, it's been 3 hours now. So
yeah, and look, I know, but the thing is with there are so many levels and so much disinformation with regards to 9/11. You can't really go through this in half an hour or 2 hours, because there's just so much that you need to discuss. But we are on the last point, and that is with regards to Gene stating eyewitness accounts of multiple explosions. Numerous witnesses' account align with controlled demolition, not explained by the due hypothesis. Once again, he hasn't read chapter 7, pages 95 to 130 that discuss the so-called explosions and everything like that. So let's just quickly mosey on through that, and then after that we'll try and finish up as quickly as possible. The main thing here is my article with regards to was every boom a bomb on 9/11. Obviously, the September 11 attacks left everyone dazed and confused, trying to make sense of a multitude of things happening around them at once, and news reporters had a very difficult time putting into words what they were seeing and what they were hearing. And if you are a hardened 9/11 conspiracy theorist, you'll be well aware that the TV coverage and witness testimonies are a rabbit hole all by itself. I'm not going to go through this 3-minute video. We've already discussed the testimonies of this EMT, and then this very important point also needs to be raised with regards to that real quick.
People who say, okay, we heard, they claim they heard explosions. And so therefore it must be bombs in the building. They're starting with assuming what did it, and then going back to assuming what problem they're solving, instead of determining first what happened. Well, if you recall, blasting zone ahead, turn off cell phones and two-way radios just in case it triggers something. How are you going to get everyone to unknowingly turn off all their cell phones in southern Manhattan for weeks ahead while they prepare the site? But there were sounds of explosions. Bombs go boom, but not everything that goes boom is a bomb. Think of putting an egg in your microwave oven. Turns out there's a lot of folks who talked about these Scott packs exploding at ground level, sitting on the fire trucks.
Firefighter Patrick Sullivan says there was this huge ambulance. It must have had Scott bottles or oxygen bottles on it, and they were going off. You could hear the air go spoom, and they were exploding. So we stretched a line and tried to put that out. Firefighter Todd Heaney says, we were just starting to put out the car fires, and the rigs were going. Ambulances. I mean, there must have been 50 of these things burning heavily. The Scott cylinders and the oxygen cylinders were all letting go. They were all blowing up left and right.
And so we have to ask ourselves, what if these air tanks were being influenced by this energy which was destroying the World Trade Center, and it caused the walls of the air tanks to weaken? We know that the air tanks are pressurized, so what are they going to do? Same goes for any pressurized tanks inside the World Trade Center, such as fire extinguishers, such as some of the components in the pressurized toilet systems in the restrooms and so forth. If there were any pressurized tanks there, or hydraulic tanks that were under pressure, and their walls were weakened in some way, then they would explode. So that might explain some of these explosive sounds in the buildings during the destruction, perhaps.
So yeah, that's basically it. We've gone through the toasted cars. Another very interesting aspect has been put forth with regards to explosions and everything is the testimony of Mike Beccario. He was mentioning things like the whole building seemed to shake and there was a loud explosion. Once again, if something goes boom, it doesn't mean it's a bomb. And he was with one of his co-workers, and when the two arrived at the sea level, they found the machine shop gone. There was nothing there but rubble, Mike said. We're talking about a 50-ton hydraulic press gone. The two made their way to the parking garage, but found that it too was gone. There were no walls, there was rubble on the floor, and you can't see anything, he said. And they decided to send 2 more levels to the building's lobby. As they ascended to the B level, 1 floor above, they were astonished to see a steel and concrete fire door that weighed about 300 pounds wrinkle up like a piece of aluminium foil and lying on the floor. They got us again, Mike told his co-worker, referring to a terrorist attack in the center in 1993. He was convinced a bomb had gone off in the building. Once again, he's making a assumption, because it doesn't necessarily mean a bomb, as we saw in the video. So you have a 50-ton hydraulic press disappearing, a steel and concrete fire door that weighed about 300 pounds, wrinkled up like a piece of aluminium foil, and you want to sell it to me that a bomb caused that. So that reminds us of this experiment by John Hutchinson. This is intersecting electromagnetic waves, field effects, and sound waves. You see it starting to bob, and you will see smoke coming out of it.
Get it. Oh, goodness, what the hell?
And the best thing is that was cold to the touch.
A lot of smoke, by the way, but no, the actual sample was...
So you can come and read this article, and then once again with the spontaneous fires, with his experiment with the boat. We've already gone through John Alexander's testimony with regards to what he and John Hutchinson were up to in Los Alamos in 1986. And then we've got to bring in a little bit of information with regards to Building 7 and the hoax video that's out there, also explaining the explosions that were heard. So this is a short little snippet where he was trying to debunk the explosive proponents. Thank you, MES, for helping out with this one as well. Which of those? Let's just go back to this.
Lots of things in an office building can explode when heated. Also, explosion-like sounds are not necessarily explosions. They can be structural failures.
What the hell is it? What's going on here?
Or even elevator cables snapping. But isn't there a video showing actual explosions? Yes, there is. A hoax that I myself made in 2011 to test the critical thinking of demolition believers. In addition to flashes and explosion sounds taken from real demolitions, I added a flying saucer and made the building collapse even faster than the real one. Many people fell for it.
There can be no doubt that we are witnessing explosive detonations immediately prior to the collapse of the near 50-story structure.
It fooled a state legislator, this dumb website fell for it, and 10 years later, people are still sending it to me as proof.
And just a note on that last video you sent, that explosive one. I actually had to lower the volume on that when I edited it because it was too loud. So it's actually louder than it even played over there.
Yeah, and they basically spent like 2 or 3 months preparing that building, and if I remember correctly, that was around about a 30-something odd building that had a massive issue with the inner core because they had steel cores in the concrete and all of that. So I've got that somewhere on one of my channels with regards to the preparation of that building. Once again, here I bring in the point that when Richard Gage and AE and most of the people talk about Building 7, they never play it with the audio because you don't hear any explosions going off. The building falls silently. I'm not going to go through this 5-minute video right now. Then the main question that I've asked a couple of the guys so far in video in the question and answer sections is what kind of seismic activity we will expect. And unfortunately, we've got the Swifties over here that caused a 2.3 on a Richter scale with regards to jumping up and down at a concert. And then with Building 7, this is a very important thing because it never gets mentioned by anybody in the Truth and Movement, because you had a 230,000-ton building that went down, but it didn't leave a seismic reading that's in line with it. So luckily, it's just a 43-second one.
Down here at the bottom, that was an earthquake in the Fox Islands, which is up part of the Aleutian Islands. But look at the thing just before then. That was Building 7 going away. You can't even see.
And the Aleutian Islands is a 5-hour flight away. So they tend to say, oh, but maybe the seismographs weren't calibrated correctly or too far away or whatever. So please don't even come with that.
See it on the chart. It made a 0.6 equivalency on the Richter scale, which is like a jackhammer. and it was 6 times the mass of the King Dome. No wave traveled through the Earth. It was only surface waves. That doesn't happen in building demolitions. You know, you always have an S wave and a P wave with building demolitions.
There were actually no S or P waves registered for the 2 towers and Building 7. Another aspect with regards to that, and you can see this in the observable evidence series, I've got a link here to a 16-minute video that discusses Building 7, and the main takeaways from a controlled demolition is you've got loud explosions during the destruction, seismic impact matches the potential energy of the building, the dust cloud does not rise above the height of the building. And when you look at what happened to Building 7, it is the complete opposite. And this is a very interesting aspect with regards to our truther friends.
The important thing to note about Richard Gage and architects and engineers for 9/11 is that they only focus on Building 7, not the 2 tallest buildings in the world disappearing, turning to dust. And that's because the footage of Building 7, you could say, yeah, that's a controlled demolition. But if you have your headphones on and you're listening to the audio, that building doesn't make a sound when it collapses. And the seismic impact was no more than a jackhammer. You couldn't even really distinguish it from background noise. So that's not a 47-story building falling to the ground. I'm sorry. Now, that's a smart tactic to, focus on Building 7. Forget about the Twin Towers. They're not important. They only just turn to dust before our eyes, but let's not talk about them. Building 7 is the important one. And we're going to say it's controlled demolition, which the seismic data does not support that. The video evidence, the audio evidence. So come on, it's ridiculous.
And the wonderful aspect with regards to this is AE or Architects for a Engineered Truth spent $316,000 in trying to debunk the NIST report, but they didn't make any argument with regards to their so-called explosive evidence of it being a controlled demolition. So please read through the rest of this article about what we learned, what we saw, because we had Building 7 with all of this dust just coming out from it from one angle. We had the Tower 1 that also lathered up on the same way. Just read through this, and this is a very, very important aspect that you've got to read through here as well. I know we're running out of time, so I don't want to keep on going for too long, but I do need to do my little summary of it. So what did Jean Laratonda say to summarize? He basically said the points highlighted the inconsistencies and lack of evidence supporting due hypothesis with an alternative explanation proving more plausible answers. I think so far we've pretty much shown that whatever he thinks is a counter is not even close to a counter with regards to what actually happened. And this is a very, very important discussion with Dr. Wood with regards to a final thought on the truther movement and the evidence that they are not discussing. So we are nearly done. It's most probably another 15 minutes or so. Matthew, sorry for holding you up for so long, but this isn't something you can just run through very quickly. As I say, I've done most probably close to 3,000 or 4,000 hours in the last two years. So this is just trying to bring this to a level that's just as short as possible. But yeah, you can get really, really deep into this.
Is, whoever planned 9/11, do you think it just slipped their mind and they forgot to plan a cover-up? Of course they would plan a cover-up. So what would the cover-up look like? You know, there are going to be people asking questions and poking around. What do you do with those people? You round them up and contain them. Keep them out of trouble.
I think that there are a lot of people in the truth movement who are not afraid of her work and who would respond very positively to it. When we talk about the truth movement, I think we have to make a clear distinction between all those people who want to know the truth about 9/11, which includes me and you two as well. Mm-hmm. Everyone wants to know what really happened at 9/11, how it was done, who did it and why, is part of the truth movement. Everyone who acknowledges that the official story of Muslim hijackers is a lie is part of the truth movement. The problem is not with people in the truth movement in general. The problem is with the designated leaders of the truth movement. They're the ones that are very much afraid of Dr. Wood's work. And there are any number of reasons for that being so. I'll just point out two, which I consider to be glaringly obvious. First of all, the evidence that she presents and the case she builds on that evidence for what happened in terms of science at 9/11, at Ground Zero, is irrefutable. Mm-hmm. And they are terrified of her evidence and her argument because they cannot refute it. They cannot, in a fair argument, refute what she says. And her evidence clearly refutes the thermite theory of controlled demolition. So that's one reason why they're afraid. Another reason why they're afraid is because the designated leaders, that would be Gage and Jones, and the people who have clustered around them, have been hideously duped. And either they are pure dupes who've been caught in the psyops of 9/11, or they are accomplices and accessories to that psyops. I couldn't really say. But they're either one or the other. And in that case, they certainly are afraid of anybody or anything who would expose that dupery. And so I think they're not just afraid. I think, if you'll pardon the allusion to this term, they're in terror. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they have good reason to be. So that's my comment on why they're afraid of Dr. Wood's work.
Indeed. Dr. Wood, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I was looking at some various definitions. In various techniques that they try to cover it up, they don't want anyone to look at my book. My book is pure empirical evidence, and it leads to a conclusion that's conclusive evidence. And so how do you cover that up? You call it a theory. You call it a theory, then you can say, oh, there's no evidence that supports her theories and speculation. They call it theories. It's a favorite one. And I'd like to ask if by theory they mean speculation, because there's no speculation in my work. I build a case on evidence like a detective solving a crime. What I present is conclusive evidence. And being conclusive evidence, it puts an end to the debating by reason of irrefutability. That's what the meaning of the word conclusive is. Serving, by Webster Dictionary, serving to put an end to all debate and questioning. And so if my evidence puts an end to all the debate and questioning, then what can they do with it? The party's over.
That's right. The party's over in terms of speculation, but the real party begins in terms of getting to the truth. And I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Wood, that truth unifies. When people accuse you of causing division in the 9/11 movement, that is absolutely ridiculous and irrational, and it's slanderous and deceptive, because you have produced pure evidence, and the pure evidence leads us to the truth, and the truth is what we all come together on. So it's 10 years down the road now, and it's time to see if we can come together on 9/11 in the truth and not in speculations and theories. The moment has come to see if we can do that.
One thing I'd like to add is that my definition of truth movement is more of this, group, because of how I've come to know it. I think there's truth seekers, and they're individuals, and they organized. The organization I refer to as the truth movement, but that's a definition difference.
No, I follow that
what
distinction.
it means.
Right, I follow that distinction there. But there are many truth seekers who are quite willing to look at your work and who are impeded by doing so by the designated leaders of the truth movement.
There's been a lot of, I've kind of casually referred to them as defectors, who are leaving the organized truth movement and realizing they've been duped. They've been led down a blind alley down to a dead-end street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how cover-ups, I think, work.
That is indeed how cover-ups work, yes.
That's right.
People are led into confusion, and then they're offered false solutions. This is how the PSYOPs operates. There's an enormous PSYOPs around 9/11. And it's beginning to dawn on me now, as I've been paying closer and closer attention to Dr. Wood's work, that on the scientific foundation that she's provided for the evidence of what was done and how it was done, from that foundation, we can start to look at the PSYOPs that was built around it and start to deconstruct and break down the PSYOP.
Well, whoever planned 9/11.
Okay, we're in the home stretch now. This is the last 10 minutes. Now, in beginning of 2023, we had a new organization being formed. It is the International Center for 9/11 Justice, led by Ted Walter, who worked alongside Richard Gage for 8 years. He's been causing a lot of trouble because the guy who did the $316,000 donation 4-year study with regards to Building 7, he's pulled him over to him away from the AE 9/11 people. And there's a huge hoo-ha and a fight between the thermite people, old Ted Walters, and he's got a guy that is trying to get justice for his brother that died in the tower. And we had the chance to ask a question to both of them. I think this was in October 2023. This is the second to last video, and then we're basically going to finish off with Dr. Wood's thoughts on everything. So just listen to this question that I asked them and the answer, and then just the rundown with regards to what they stated. And this is a good summary of everything that you guys have taken the time to sit through, and I do appreciate everybody who is still in the chat. I haven't got the chat open, and so let's just try and finish up real quick.
Let me read this. Matt, sorry for your loss, and I commend you for your concerted effort over the years to keep the memory of your brother alive and fighting for a new investigation. I'm not well read up on exactly what processes you've followed and what kind of leverage you've tried to use to get this new investigation to happen. I do have a suggestion that could help you and your requests, or if you mention some additional information for your application and when you do get your day in court. This is information you might not know of. I wonder, has Ted, Walter, or anyone in the 9/11 Truth Movement ever told you about two major court cases from 2007 that could possibly help your cause? These two court cases were whistleblower, Ketam cases that were filed against 23 NIST subcontractors for science fraud. The cases were based on False Claims Act that basically meant the U.S. government or any organization was not allowed to cite PSYOPs on the American public. But I think Obama scrapped the act, so now the U.S. government and organizations may carry out PSYOPs on the American people. Almost done. One of these cases went as far as being filed in the Supreme Court in 2009, but the 9/11 Truth Movement has effectively been censoring this information. So Ted, could you tell us of evidence presented in these cases that the controlled demolition and thermite theories cannot explain. Things like the lack of seismic readings for two 10-story buildings hitting the ground, the 16 survivors in Stairway B of the North Tower, the undamaged bathtub, the mostly undamaged basements, the disappearance of 90% of World Trade Center 3, 75% of World Trade Center 4, the missing insides of WTC 6, the cold fuming of the rubble pile for 100 days. There are many more anomalies, so Teddy's asking about those.
I'm not aware of those cases. I think I might have seen a flicker of them somewhere mentioned on the internet. I'm not aware of the evidence that was presented in them. I'm not clear if this is the directed energy weapon hypothesis or the nuclear hypothesis or a combination thereof. I am not a scientist, but I've read a lot over the years, and I know that there's some portion of the 9/11 truth movement that is very convinced by Judy Wood's argument that there was directed energy weapons used. I have found the evidence of thermite or thermite-related devices and high explosives in the core of the buildings to be more persuasive. I think that there's actually undue attention put onto this issue of what the specific mechanisms were, when the most important thing is that it was not a natural building collapse, that it was not a structural failure. I think that the key here is that something was done, that these devices were used, some sort of technology was used to bring the buildings down. That was not the airplanes and the fires. So I think an undue amount of focus is put on that question, and it tends to cause more division and dissent and dissension and whatnot than progress by focusing on it. So that's my sense.
Thank you.
About thermite or nukes or this or that, and it just, you get this big huge muddle up and everyone's around in circles, arguing with people. It's really destroyed people's ability to reason. I mean, as you've seen in this book, it's right in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
But why don't people see it? Because it was such a strong psychological operation. It destroyed people's ability to know what's real and what's not. They want to know what the truth is, and they run to this truth movement business. But as I point out, do you think those who pulled off 9/11 just forgot to plan a cover-up?
Yeah, no.
And so what would it look like?
Yeah, very true.
But one of the things I'd just like to mention about truth movements as well, or the truth movement, whatever that is, we've both been accused of, dividing the truth movement or damaging it or whatever it is. Well, let's just consider that expression, truth movement. So where exactly would people like the truth to be moved to exactly? Over into this little corner where nobody can see it, which is essentially what they've tried to do. Because they've established this truth movement to move the truth out of view. That's what the truth movement has done, certainly in relation to the events of the World Trade Center on 9/11.
Sure.
That's what's happened. So truth doesn't really need a movement. The truth needs to be spoken of. It doesn't actually need a movement. You need to be looking at the evidence to establish what the truth is. And the moment that you start to move away from that process, that's when you start to help the truth to be covered up.
It's irrefutable. And so that's why when you ask me what can people do, I encourage them to first try and understand the evidence as much as you can before you try and go raising awareness about it, because a lot of people are not going to wake up to a simple YouTube video or a quick little news article. They're going to want the facts. And so try and understand the facts first.
A quick summary is that the buildings didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground, but they turned into dust in midair. How do I know that?
Because if they had collapsed to the ground, you'd have a pile of debris that would correspond to 210-story buildings. That didn't happen. Lower Manhattan would have been flooded due to a broken bathtub, the dike that holds out the Hudson River. Few people realize that the towers were built in the Hudson River. And the bedrock is 70 feet below the water table. So there's this dike, they call the bathtub or slurry wall, that holds out the Hudson River. If you crash down 2 500,000-ton buildings onto the bathtub, it would have ruptured and flooded the subway tunnels, the PATH train tunnels. That didn't happen. As a matter of fact, when they took down the remains of Building 6, they used a cable to pull it down because they were afraid to use explosives. And this was a 6-story building. It was just this little clump left. And the other way I know that it wasn't, that buildings turned to dust, just the simple way, is that if the buildings had collapsed to the ground, they'd make a thud, and the seismic signal that was recorded did not correspond to the size of the buildings. The seismic signal corresponded to a 16-story building or a 20-story building, not 110-story buildings.
There's a whole lot of evidence and very weird things that happen at the World Trade Center. Okay, there are about 10,000 file cabinets that are missing. There's about 20,000 floor trusses and 220 acres of metal decking that's missing. The question is, where did it go?
Where is all the rubble?
There's no debris.
Where the hell did these buildings go? Yeah. You're talking about 110-story buildings that fucking evaporated.
Where did the towers go?
When the towers went away, there was no S wave or P wave. It was only a surface wave. And you get that when you lift the buildings off the ground. You no longer have that weight there. It's gone.
At the bottom of the towers was something called the bathtub.
If the debris of the buildings had fallen into that bathtub, it would have ruptured the walls, resulting in the entire flooding of Lower Manhattan, but the walls were not ruptured.
These huge buildings turned to dust in midair right in front of our faces on TV. Why did so few people see that?
It's incomprehensible for somebody to see something solid turn into dust. Free your mind.
The dust was hitting people, and people were not burning. Obviously, the dust was not hot.
Dust cloud rolls out, and it leaves behind people covered with dust, not burned bodies. Why not the trees? Why not the buildings? Why not the paper?
How do you explain that? The cars burn, the paper doesn't.
The alleged plane that we saw on the video went through the building like knife through hot butter, almost as if there was no resistance whatsoever.
What I can say for certain is a normal airplane did not hit a normal wall. That's impossible.
Believes that these satellite photographs are of mysterious non-nuclear explosions near an uninhabited island in the East Siberian Sea, and that they are discharges from an RF weapon that uses intersecting energy beams called scalars.
In doing so, you can create, for example, either an electromagnetic explosion at a distance, or you can create an electromagnetic implosion at a distance, the extraction of energy from a distant point. This would look like a cold explosion, so to speak. Or you can create an electromagnetic implosion at a distance, the extraction of energy from a distant point. This would look like a cold explosion, so to speak. This would look like a cold explosion, so to speak.
And this sequence was another great collab with MES. Thank you, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, yeah, this is a great clip, especially the Tom Bearden one.
Let me read this.
And now,
Matt, sorry.
Closing, let's just hear from Dr. Wood in her own words.
All right.
First clip is from her latest podcast interview in 2023. The second one is from a podcast in 2021.
Going full circle on your production of the book and all the work you've done up to this point and all the scrutiny you've been under, what would you like for humanity or mankind to get out of your work? I mean, what do you think would be the ultimate message for the listeners and mankind as a whole?
Yeah, the book is essentially a course in critical thinking. If you read the book from front to back, don't jump around, just read it from front to back and read it, several times. I think, and you can let me know what you think of it, that it conditions you to see what's there instead of what you're told to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be so vital in the future. And that's why I wanted to take the time at the beginning, and thanks for putting up with it. All that,
of course.
Yeah, that's as short as I could put it, at the beginning about why you have to look at what happened and not be jumping to conclusions.
Yeah.
Because, how do magicians work?
Yeah.
And the government's now free to do psyops on the American people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've seen that. We've seen that in droves.
Going full circle on
there's a crystal ball, Judy, in front of you. What do you see?
In terms of what? It depends on how badly people want to know the truth. The truth is so important. The truth has consequences, but running from the truth has even more consequences. And that's an important thing to remember. So, knowing what the truth is vital, not what you want the truth to be. And it's a really important thing. So depending on how many people can get on board with that is where it's at, I think.
There's a crystal.
And that is me. In the story, only touching the surface, you need to read the book. You need to listen to a bunch of the interviews and make up your own mind. And that is pretty much it.
Yep. A great show, great show. So Reality Access also says great show once again. And a whole lot of people like the stuff, and there wasn't too many people at the block, only like a few. They were pushing nukes or explosives, but yeah, great show. This is let's see, 3 hours and 47 minutes.
Dude, I'm sorry. I try to keep it as quick as possible, but
it's all right.
But 9/11 isn't a quick thing.
Yeah, and this is February.
So this is 4,000 hours, most probably compressed into 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, and this is only February, so imagine on 9/11, we'll do a full 11-hour.
No, we just replay this.
Yeah. All right, and then okay, so Joe says great job, thanks, and then Timothy Sullivan says thank you, gentlemen. This means a lot to me. You're paving the path out for me. I was there, just to the south of the towers on the day. Whoa, that's epic. I give Dr. Wood and you both my best regards, best wishes, thanks. Epic stuff. Yeah. So Timothy, if you want to get on the live stream for a call just to discuss your experience with it. And Stephen F. says, wonderful stuff. 9/11 Planes Research says, thanks, Norman and Matthew. So yes, epic stuff. And I need to go eat.
No, you can wait for one second, because this whole challenge is still standing. I extended it to June this year. And people can go read this article. I dropped it down in November, giving the guys who don't really want to talk to me chances, and that's the video we already played. And I'm calling out Richard Gage, Ted Walter, David Chandler, Andy Steele, Gene Laratonda, and if we can have a quick discussion, having me, you, and Andrew Johnson on. Brought in a couple of stuff. Richard Gage doesn't want to have me take him on public forums. The International Center for 9/11 Justice with Ted Walter doesn't want to as well. And whilst we were busy with the presentation, I had people commenting on my latest article where on the Pentagon article that I had, there is some serious conversations in the comment sections. So people, please go check out my Substack. The comment sections are really interesting. And what the last thing is with regards to my Telegram channel, there is 1,227 photos, a couple of videos, a couple of files with regards to Thomas E. Bearden and his scalar weaponry, a bunch of declassified CIA presentations the guy did with regards to RF weaponry. There is a bunch of sub context things where you can see a lot of stuff, so that's also a very good learning hub. So you just need to put in the time, because 9/11 won't be explained in a 15-minute video. It's just too complex.
Yeah, 100%. So I shared them in the chat, your Telegram, and the Substack. And that Substack article where you challenged Gene to get on a live stream with Richard Gage, Ted Walter, David Chandler, Andy Steele, and then Gene Laratonda on one side. Then you'll have us, you, Andrew Johnson, and MES. And we'll have Alex Jones moderator maybe.
Well, we can even bring in Fitz and the Nuke boys as well, because all the other narratives that have been put in there to try and counter what Dr. Wood presents is just not feasible whatsoever. It's provable.
Yeah, 100%. But the thing is, I highly doubt they would, because they've probably seen some of my videos mocking them and laughing.
No, don't worry, dude. I've been CCing you in the email conversations this week.
Yeah,
so
I've seen that. Yeah, Fetzer, he's been repeating himself for like 10 years, exactly the same thing that he wrote to Matthew Nas, the exact same thing about his review on Judy Wood's book. It's like he's following a script that he was made to write or something. All right, and let's see. We're getting near to 4 hours. Is there anything else? Because I'm about to hang out.
No, that's pretty much me. Anybody who actually sat through this 4 hours, thank you so very much. Because after 22 years, it's time that people actually stop outsourcing their thinking. Don't believe me. Just go read Dr. Wood's book. That's the begin all and end all, and especially Andrew Johnson's two books where he was chronicling what happened since 2005 up to now, and it will show you what's been going on. And a lot of people have woken up after the COVID hoax and all the things around that, and that's what's brought in a bunch of new people into the so-called let's question everything we think we know is correct. And it's a journey. It's every person, if you really want to learn the truth, you unfortunately need to put in the hours. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to narrow down spending a hell of a lot of hours into my Substack and and my Odyssey channel and my Telegram channel, where you at least have the tools to just make that search a lot shorter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you made topics in your Telegram is very good. You can literally sort through everything. So that's epic stuff. And all right, and so Conspiracy Theorista says, thank you 9/11 Revisionist, awesome presentation. And Mark Conlon, 9/11 Planes Research, great stuff. And great. Hope to see you on the next Saturday, not the Saturday, then the one after, the 24th is going to be a interview with Mark Conlon, going over a lot of the alleged plane info.
Mark Conlon is the OG on all plane.
Yeah, it's gonna be epic stuff.
So people, you need to tune in for that one.
Yeah, and Frogscotch says key is pawns and Fleischmann. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, cold fusion, exotic vacuum objects, and ball lightning. Have some more info on that. And all right, guys, and any last words on Island Revisionist? You could say thanks to Jones. Yeah, thanks so.
Once again, thank you for everybody tuning in.
All right, guys, I'm about to end the stream.
It is 3 a.m. in South Africa.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, guys, if he's staying up 3 a.m., you guys better have watched all 4 hours in regular time. All right, it's almost 5 p.m. and I'm gonna go eat some food, my first meal of the day. All right, guys.
Keep well, man.
Have a good one. Ending the stream in 3, 2, 1, and ending.
Done.
Bye.